and lifestyle videos about asexuality and dating, relationships, confidence, self-love, and self-care. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, please subscribe and hit the bell icon right now. So I want to ask you a question. Have you ever had a therapist, a counselor, and you're questioning whether it's right for you to stay with them or not? There's some red flags about the counsel therapist, and you're feeling something is a bit off, but you're not quite sure what it is. Now, this is particularly important if you've had to deal with any form of narcissism or avoidancy, and that's really hurt you. And there's been lies and manipulation involved, as there is with narcissism and narcissists. And I'm not a trained medical professional myself. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I have to say I'm not a medical professional or anything like that. I have got basic counselling skills. I've got coaching qualification. Well, I'm not qualification, I would say certification. Life coaching skills, certification, rather than qualification. That's the correct terminology, because I did a life coaching course with the Coaching Academy, but that was a certification, not an actual qualification. But I have got a qualification in information, advice and guidance. I've got an actual diploma for that. So this is where I'm coming from. I have lived experience of being in narcissistic avoidant relationships. And I am in Matthew Hussey's Love Life Club. He's the world's #1 dating, relationships and confidence coach. And I've been his membership now for a year. Over a year. I started in May 2024. We're now in October 2025. So I'm in my second year now. And he does have courses on attachment styles and narcissism. And he also is friends with Dr. Ramani, who is the world's leading expert on narcissism. So I have this type of background, but I just wanted to state that I'm not a qualified professional psychotherapist or psychiatrist or anything like that. I want to stipulate that up front. I did a pattern changing course with a company called Stop Abuse for Everyone back in 2013. And that was how to spot patterns of abuse and how to break the cycles and change things. So this is my background. I just wanted to share where I'm coming from. But this is my personal experience based on my background. And I want to preempt this with saying that I've had to leave my therapist, as the title shows and as the shorts do. And I was really, really upset about having to leave the therapist, but I knew it was absolutely the right thing to do. Right, and now I'm going to tell you why that is. Hello, Heather. Thank you, Sandra, says Heather. Lots of love to you. I want to say, please keep the comments respectful, everyone, because I know there's some people on here that are not asexual and some people that may be new to my channel. So comments that are derogatory or not nice or facilitate abuse will not be tolerated. So I just wanted to let you know that. Love the thumbnail. Thank you. So I just want to let you know, please keep this respectful. We need to hold a safe space for each other because we're going to be talking about some things that might trigger trauma. So I just wanted to bring that up and I wanted to dive into this, but this is my own experience and what I've been learning. It was agreed with the centre manager when I left the therapy that I talked to the centre manager afterwards. I talked to before I decided to leave the therapist, this is the centre where the therapist works. And I talked to her afterwards, and it was actually decided that I'm actually more advanced than the therapist in my knowledge and understanding of narcissistic abuse and you know, navigating that and the complexities of it than the therapist who I was seeing, because she said they have general counsellors there. They don't employ any, well, it's a non-profit, I'll be honest with you, because I'm on a lower income, so it's non-profit. But she said they don't employ or, you know, have anyone that is, so they're voluntary people. So employ is kind of the wrong word to use. But anyway, they don't have anyone that's a specific therapist or counsellor in regards to narcissistic abuse and this type of thing. So this is very, very, very important. So what I want to tell you is what happened. Like, why did I fire my therapist? I was upset about it earlier, but that's more because I've spent a year with this person. I was really disappointed to find out that he was not a healthy therapist for me in the end. So what changed? So for the course of the majority of the year, like for the first 10 months, he was well, it's not really 10 months, is it? So I started seeing him October last year. So I've been seeing him like just over a year. And for 10 months of when I moved to this home, I kind of guess it is 10 months actually, because I moved around the same time I started seeing him. So yeah, you could say the same sort of 10-month mark, and probably 9 months even. I was having a lot of issues with the flat, a lot of trauma here. And to cut a long story short, he was really good at all that type of thing, because all he had to do really was sit there and listen, and I would talk and share my feelings pretty much. And so you'll have to just excuse me a minute because I have to modify chat as well. And I told you to keep it respectful. And we're not going to tolerate people who are disrespectful on this channel, right? So yeah, it's not good. Right. So yeah. Oh dearie me. So hopefully you shouldn't be seeing some ridiculous comments now. We need to keep this respectful, please. Right? Respectful. So getting back to what I was saying. So this therapist was good at listening to general stuff, right? I had a lot of problems with this flat. I had electrics blowing up, carbon monoxide leak, gas leak, serious stuff that was life-threatening to me. So I felt very unsafe in my flat. I had a lot of difficulties with personal dependence payment, universal credit, all that type of thing. All he had to do really mostly was sit there and listen and have a little bit of empathy now and again. But mostly I was doing the talking. And he was good with my spiritual side as well. So I want to say things that were good about the therapist. And he got me 2 waters and stuff like that, which was a caring thing. And he genuinely seemed pleased in his mannerisms to see me. So I want to say that those are the good things about the therapist, because, I can see the good in people. And I think it's important to see and say why I stayed with the therapist so long, because like I said, it's been just over a year, and you might be like thinking, well, surely if he's that bad I wouldn't have stayed with him for a year, right? But it was only since something happened in August, which you might know about, and at the beginning of August I had to walk away from a friendship that I'd been in a lot of years, and I'd felt that there was something off in that friendship for nearly 2 years. But the person kept denying it, right? And Heather said, hope he learned something from you. Actually, the therapist was taking notes of what I wrote. He was taking notes of what I said to him about what I wasn't getting from him. So yes, I did teach him something, whether he actually applies it or not, I don't know. But so anyway, he was good about the general stuff, and he was like listening, and he was good about my spiritual side, because I often think that spirituality can be very difficult, because you can be seen as woo-woo or crazy or this type of thing, and I'm very guided by my intuition in life, and I'm very, very spiritual, and I can see things other people can't sometimes. So for example, I was able to spot like a ladybird on the window. I was talking to him, and then all of a sudden my eyes are directed to these really tall Victorian ceilings, and I saw like a ladybird. You know what I mean? It's like, why is a ladybird indoors when there's shrubs outside and it's right up at the top and stuff like this? Just these little tiny details that it's not normal, because you're in a big massive Victorian ceiling building. It's an old-fashioned building. So anyway, getting back to my point is the fact that those things were happening. So when I left this friendship back in August, beginning of August, it was really, I had to leave suddenly, right? Because this person got aggressive with me. I don't know how much detail I've actually shared on this channel, but the person got aggressive with me, right? So I knew I was no longer safe with this person. I was no longer safe, and I was no longer emotionally safe. They went across a boundary as well, and they were doing a lot of things, the wrong things. So they were basically blaming me, deflection, gaslighting, painting themselves as a saint, all the really, really red flag behaviors this person was doing in one go, which was difficult because this person had given me a lot of help. You know, this person had given me a lot of help with my disabilities and stuff like that. But also, when you've got disabilities, it can be quite hard, because that is a way of someone being able to be like, you know, indispensable. So you kind of feel you need them more, right? And because you rely on them more and more sometimes. Whether that's right or wrong, because I did rely on them or not, I don't know. You know, you could argue that maybe I was over reliant on them sometimes, maybe, you know, which is on me for that. But I still had the courage to walk away. And I have to say that this person told me that the reason they help me is not just because they care, because they want praise and validation all the time. So they want external praise and validation. That's why they were helping me, not just to help me, right? So there was always an ulterior motive. They weren't just helping me because they cared, right? So anyway, I helped this person particularly with a lot of things over the past years, right? I helped them with I was friends with them for like over 7 years, and the first kind of like 5 years of friendship, I helped them a lot. I mean, by the time they, you know, I finished being friends with them, they were like, you know, didn't have depression anymore and stuff like this, right? But unfortunately, they went the opposite way and got very, very superior. So instead of like taking personal and professional development that I helped them with, and they actually said I was better than any therapist they'd ever had, instead of taking that and being like humble with it, they kind of went to the extreme other way of being superior with it, kind of like saying they were better, like implying they were better than me, you know, and stuff like this, right? So this wasn't good, right? And I saw a devaluation over time, or what I thought, but this person was saying to me that nothing had changed. Every time I brought up the fact that I feel the dynamics changed between me and them, they were like, no, nothing's changed, right? So when someone's cool and calm and they're saying that like that, you're then questioning yourself, like, oh, well, I feel there's a disconnect between us. I feel something's changed, and they just keep denying it. And this went on from October 2023 all the way up to when I walked away from that friendship in August, beginning of August. And so this has been really painful experience for me, right? It's been very difficult because I've been, you know, first of all, I was blaming myself because entitled behavior, exactly. Yeah, that's when what they behaved like. So first of all, I blame myself because this person blamed me. They just deflected everything onto me, painted themselves to be kind to everyone and a saint. And I'm like, well, simultaneously, they've just been aggressive to me. I mean, I'm talking about aggressive where they showed their teeth like a rabid dog, and it could end up in physical fighting, because I can feel it, because I've had physical abuse in the past, and I know what that kind of like looks like and the feeling. So luckily I've learned to diffuse things like that. I've learned ways of using diffusing techniques, which enables me to like decrease that type of atmosphere. You know what I mean? It's like de-acceleration. I don't know. I can't remember the term. It's like you're de-escalating the situation, and you have to like look away, change your tone of voice. First of all, I felt myself getting aggressive. Like I wanted to like go, you know, I'm like, I saw my tone, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel aggressive. So I'm like, calm, look the other way. And all this was like really, really difficult for me. And it's hard talking about this, but it's easier for me to talk about it now, as a matter of fact, because obviously it happened at the beginning of August. But it was a complete shock, because this particular day, we'd only just been planning to go out on a day trip together. So it went from that at like 3 o'clock, planning a day trip together, to like by 7 o'clock at night, all this had kind of happened. So they're trying to throw you off balance, cause chaos. So yeah, it was really hard, you know, and this person has avoidant tendencies, right? And I worked out they have avoidant attachment, which they did admit at one point. So, but it's very difficult. I'm anxiously attached and they're avoidant attached. So it's very, very difficult. Now, this person gave me a lot of help. I can't deny the fact they gave me a ton of help, right? It would be, you know, I'm not saying everything about them's bad or anything like that, but when a situation ends up with them being aggressive, it's time for me to leave, especially as I felt the devaluation over nearly 2 years, and they kept denying it, right? And I saw it. and the reciprocity was gone down. Like the empathy was, went really down, right? It's one of the things that really stood out for me is the empathy they had. And then it's just like, it just goes, it started going down. They were still going through the motions, but some of the stuff I was saying, I was talking about, for example, I was talking about a place that was available to rent. And I said, but I would never move to that place, because I would never move to that place because if this is where I had a situation where I was in physical abusive relationship in this particular road, and this was not light stuff. This was like really traumatic stuff where I don't even know if I should tell you because it was really horrible, but I tried to escape from my boyfriend at the time. This is my first long-term boyfriend, and he literally got hold of my leg and dragged me across the kitchen floor and bathroom floor with my right leg under my body and literally dragged me, and I was screaming, and the person from upstairs had to come down and tell him to stop it. And this was absolutely awful experience for me. So I didn't want to move because because I lost my PIP. I didn't know if I could stay here, and I was trying to find places that might be cheaper to move to that I could afford, and there's barely anything in my price range. So there was this one place in this particular road which didn't have all the facilities I needed for my disability, so it wasn't really suitable anyway from that point of view. But oh my god, thank god someone helped, thank you. I mean, he literally dragged me by then to like the bathroom. There was not, it was just a wall. I was about to sing. It was awful. It's no wonder I got fibromyalgia and I've got broken bones in my spine from a exercise I did at a business show last year. That's why my spine was broken. But you can imagine, like that, fibromyalgia is a chronic pain condition brought on by trauma, which I've had since 2012. That was my official diagnosis, symptoms in 2010. But you can tell why it's pretty obvious that I've got fibromyalgia because of all the trauma I've been through. And these are not good things. I mean, literally like being dragged by your leg, literally all the way across the kitchen. It's quite a big kitchen as well. It's probably at least as big as this lounge to kitchen combined, if not. I mean, you can't see my place. I don't know if I should show you, but it was probably like from there all the way along, kind of like there, if you know what I mean. It was like really long way, because it was like a kitchen combined bathroom. The bathroom was off the kitchen. It's just awful. And yeah, I don't even know if it was a little bit longer, but probably about roughly the same sort of length. It was awful anyway. So I said to my so-called friend at the time, who I had to walk away from because he got aggressive in the beginning of August, I said to him, this was not far from when the friendship ended actually, that it was like a few weeks before or something. I said that Heather said, sorry, those things happened to you, thank you. So yeah, I haven't really talked about that because it's quite painful experience. But anyway, I told my friend that at the time, he's not my friend anymore, I told him that I didn't want to live in that road because I didn't want to live near the place where I had that happen. Also, my other long-term ex, he lives in a road off that, and I can't be anywhere near him. He's like, I'm at medium risk from him harming me on the police register from years ago, right? So I can't be near him, right? He used to stalk me, and I do not want to live near. I live near him now anyway, because he lives I think he still lives not far from where I live, because I've seen him twice since I moved here. Although once wasn't near here. It was down the other end of the city. In the city centre more, I should say, rather than down the other end, because I live more at the top end now. But anyway, yeah, so it's hard even living this close to him again. But, that would be like literally adjacent. It would be a road adjacent to where he lives. I think he still lives there because of where I saw him near my home a few months ago. So anyway, I said that I don't want to live there. And instead of my friend at the time showing empathy, and saying, of course you wouldn't want to live there. That's really traumatic what you went through. And like you said in comments, like, thank God someone helped me. I mean, I mean, pretty much you'd already dragged me fully across the rooms by then, but there's another layer to add to this. It's the person that helped me. Her husband had been to prison for he's suspected of murdering someone, but they found nothing on him, but he wasted police time and he went to prison. So it was the wife of the guy who went to prison who actually came down and told the guy who was dragging me across the room by my leg not to do that. So it's just like really, really, it was a minefield living there. The day I moved there with that first long-term ex was the day I found out it had all the forensics with the white masks and the coats and everything on. And so, because they were searching for evidence of him murdering someone who was really high prolific person who was murdered in my city, who they've never caught the murderer for. So, but he had a white van and there was a white van involved. That's why they thought it was him. And he'd been in prison before. So he went to prison for wasting police time on this particular case. And he stole my mobile phone as well. But it was horrible because it was like, she was a wife of this guy who was a criminal himself, who came down to yell to stop. So it gets very complicated. I come from a very background full of trauma and really, domestic violence, abuse and all that lot. And it's really, really hard and tough. And that makes forming new relationships very difficult because you tend to attract people unconsciously who have not got good traits as well, And so we have to figure out what patterns these people have in order to try and break the cycle of getting with these wrong people in the first place, right? And so this can be really, really tough. And I wanted to share all this with you to show you where I'm coming from. And so you can imagine, like you've said, like the people who are empathetic in comments here, like Heather and also Mixed Green Alien, right? I've seen you being very empathetic. So I expected the person I'd been friends with for years to have empathy for these things, right? And understand why, even though it was in my price range, I definitely wouldn't want to live there. I mean, it'd be so traumatic and re-traumatizing me, and I would be unsafe living near the other ex who used to stalk me and who was he was narcissistic and he was verbally and physically abusive as well. So in the same road, this person had been abusive, like where we used to live. He doesn't live there anymore. He moved back to his mother. I don't know what's happened to him now. But anyway, the point is I don't want to live near the home that I lived in with him that caused me, where I was being physically abused. And then the other person lives in the road off that road. And he is still, I can't be near him, right? I mean, I have come across him twice near me this year because I moved nearer him, which is really bad. I didn't intentionally move near him. This is far enough. I don't want to go any further near him, but I do not want to be in the road adjacent to him, right? It would be awful because I would see him a lot more. And he is really dangerous. Like, he doesn't care about police. He had a police warrant on him at one point. I don't know if warrant's a term. When you get a notice served on him to say, don't come near me. And he still came near me. And he used to stalk me and come into my ex job and all this lot. So this is really, really, he doesn't care about police, right? He's actually a former criminal himself. He used to I'm not a criminal, I'm the opposite. And I didn't realize even till the past, very end of that second long-term relationship, the guy who still lives up there not far from me, who I don't want to be anywhere near, he was on the register. He told me under his other identity, former identity, because he changed his name. He actually changed the name to the same surname as mine by solicitor. So in his former identity, he used to be a prolific shoplifter, he told me, and he only told me this kind of just a few weeks, I think, or months before we split up. I think it was in the last 2 months before we split up. But he worked in retail. He changed his name and he worked in retail. And I only just thought about that this year. Oh my God, he worked in retail and he used to be a shoplifter. Like, he's probably shoplifted loads of stuff in that other job, unless he changed it. He made out he turned a leaf over when he was with me, you know, but I didn't know he was a prolific shoplifter before. So do you know what I mean? It was like, I thought, I wonder if they ever, you know, they probably never knew about, the retail company probably never knew his background because he changed his name when he met me, you see, so they wouldn't have him on record under that name as doing those things. And like I said, I didn't even know till the end of our relationship that he used to be a prolific shoplifter on the wanted poster in retail stores. This was not in the city where I lived. This was in his former city with his former identity. And so, yeah, you know, I've been mixed up with guys that have really not got my best interests at heart, and they're the opposite to me, right? So I've been in a background of like trauma, narcissistic abuse, avoidant tendencies, really like mental, physical, emotional abuse, this type of thing. I have had sexual abuse, but no, that's not why I'm asexual. And yeah, I actually feel that the sexual abuse is less of a problem for me dealing with that. I know that might sound weird, and I don't want to minimize sexual abuse because it's never on, but I've kind of like dealt with those things in my head. It's like 2 incidents, the people, you know, it's not my fault, it was, you know, and that should never happen. That's on them, that's not on me. And, you know, luckily I protected myself. I managed to get out of both of those. Well, one of them was attempted to have sex against my will, and the other one actually did it. So, but you know what I mean? I just wanted to say that I'm not asexual because of that. You know, it's not like I lack sexual attraction because of that. I had sex after those experiences because I have had sex, actually. I'm an asexual that has had sex. And whilst my last long-term relationship ended in 2011, which is the guy that I can't be near, who used to stalk me, I did actually have sex with him, and it was good when I was with him. He was actually like a different person. It's really weird. It like completely flipped. He was like nice, kind, and caring when he had sex with me. The rest of the time, he was horrible, putting me down, belittling me, shouting at me in the streets, pinning me up against wardrobes and fridge freezers and all sorts, right? So I just wanted to let you know that, right? I'm at age 29. Good guess. So anyway, I like that guess, right? Anyway, so may not be exactly that age, but it's a good guess. Right, so asexual means a lack of sexual attraction. It means I don't get the need, urge, or want for partnered sexual intercourse. So I'm actually not interested in sex whatsoever. But I just wanted to make it clear it's not because I've had sexual abuse, because people are like, oh, you had sexual abuse, that's why you are asexual. It's like, no, even going back to my first relationship at 6 years old with a heterosexual guy, I knew I didn't want to do sexual activities then. In my teens, I never thought about sex. That's kind of like when I was 15, was when my boyfriend at that time, tried to have sex with me, and I didn't even expect it. So I had to physically protect myself from doing that. It was horrible experience at the time, but I just put it down to a bad experience in my life and moved on. So it's really weird that that would probably cause people a lot of, I say I moved on, I kind of blame myself for a while because I didn't say no at the time, because he just like was trying to do that. I didn't expect it because I didn't think about sex, because I'm literally asexual, so I don't think about sex. So they want to know what happened to my unempathetic friend, so let's get back to that. Yeah, so with my unempathetic friend, he said he wanted to look at the property in that road where I said that I definitely wouldn't want to move there because of the trauma I experienced. So instead of him being empathetic about, oh my gosh, of course you wouldn't want to live there, you don't want to relive the trauma that you encountered, being dragged across. First of all, if someone told me they were being dragged across the floor like that, I would immediately think, oh my god, this is horrific. And it was horrific. I mean, there's no doubt about that. That was a horrific thing in my life, because I tried to leave and he slammed the door and like dragged me. You know what I mean? It's awful. And I don't think I've really shared much about that on here. So anyway, I was, sorry, it's hard for me to talk about this sometimes because trauma, it can bring up triggers and it can make things harder to talk about. But I feel it's important you hear these things because it's relevant to what I'm talking about. And this chat show is an educational show. After all, I always give more kind of backstory rather than my lifestyle videos on my shorts and short snippets of my life. So yeah. And anyway, he was unempathetic. So instead of him saying, oh my gosh, of course you wouldn't want to live near there, he said, oh, show me the property. So I had to send him a link to the property. And it's like, excuse me? If you care about, I was thinking in my head, if you care about my well-being, then why are you even asking for the link? All you care about is me showing you the property, not my safety. Do you know what I mean? Whereas years ago, before I felt a devaluation, I felt he would never have been like that with me. He would always have cared for my safety and always worried about me like that and wouldn't want me to have lived in a place like that. So this complete shift in personality with his empathy really struck me. I'm like, what the hell? This is this year. Because I was thinking, where could I move to if I lost my pit? But I wouldn't want to live there. Just imagine living with someone who stalked you, who's even got who's even I'm at medium risk from him harming me again by the police, have said that years ago. And, he's unhealthy for me, and being in the road adjacent to him, plus the road where I was really physically abused. It's not good. And I was, if he still lives where I think he lives, the other one's abusive as well. So it's like two abusers, one's moved, the one that dragged me across the floor, but the other one's still there. But even the memories are just awful. So the former friend who was unempathetic, all he cared about was wanting to see the property, to send him a link. And I'm like, this is how much he changed. And I'm like, I really don't understand this. I don't understand why he's unempathetic. I mean, to me, it just screams why? This person's supposed to be your friend. They're supposed to care about you. They do loads of acts of service for you, but they're not even, doing that. So that was really hurtful and painful. And it really raised a huge red flag, right? And in the end, this person had, in the end, the former friend who I had to walk away from due to the aggression, he'd actually lied to me. He'd, withheld some information as well, which was very relevant. And he decided to return and reconnect with a person who deceived me for over 5 years. And he was witness firsthand to them deceiving and betraying me for 5 years of friendship. This was another friendship. So I've had 2 friendships that have both basically ended really badly. At least the first friendship, I know for definite they deceived me the whole 5 years. This last one, I'm like, what the hell was longer friendship? I'm like, what the hell went on? How much deception did they do? But I felt a devaluation since October 2023. Something happened then when they became very, very superior towards me. And it's the knowledge that I gave them, instead of being humble about it, they were kind of using it against me in some way, so I have real bad anxiety, but I've learned techniques how to manage anxiety, and they had anxiety at one point. They still have social anxiety, apparently. But I taught them stuff and techniques. But when I went to speak at Oxford University for Blue Talks, I was struggling with my anxiety because it was a huge audience and really, really big thing. And I knew that I'm fine at talking here, but when it comes to in-person talking, honestly, the Oxford University, it's a big deal with people in person, and it's hard for me. Plus, I had to deal with someone there who I'm not going to name, who previously not been good in some way to me. They'd made me quite upset about something, so that made things more difficult. Everyone else was lovely, but there was one particular person, which I won't go into. I'm not allowed to divulge that person. But anyway, I'd had difficulties with the person who I knew was going to be there. And so that was really hard. And they weren't very good about my personality and stuff as well, which is not nice. So there was a lot of stuff going on. I was really, really anxiety induced. But instead of this now former friend, he was my friend at the time, instead of him being really kind and caring, and I was trying all the tools I'd learnt in my toolbox to manage my anxiety, but hardly any of them was working. He was just making the things worse, going, put mind over matter, do blah, 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 blah. And he's like, oh, I could write a book on this. And I'm like, you don't even write. I'm the writer, and I taught you all those things. And at the moment, they're not working. Do you know what I mean? So it's really difficult to get anything to work. So instead of having empathy and being caring and compassionate, he wasn't. And he did come afterwards when I got back to apologise for the way he spoke to me and what he said, because he knew it was wrong and it was making me feel worse, which I thought was good, and I forgave him. But then he said, I can walk away if you want. And that's when our friendship completely, from my perspective, changed, because I'm thinking, if you can walk away just that easily, when I've actually forgiven you for the way you treated me, because it wasn't good, it was like really superior and putting me, kind of putting me down in some ways. Well, it was really difficult. Then, you know what I mean? Why would he just be willing to just walk away like that? And I'd been friends with him at this point for over 5 years. It just seemed weird. And so after that, I felt imbalance in the whole friendship. And every time I tried to discuss it with him, I had a hard conversation, which was really difficult for me. I'm not used to doing that. But now I'm in the Love Life Club since May last year. I've learned to do that more and more, which is really hard for me. And I started off by crying when I was doing that, because I don't like conflict. I don't want to upset people. I don't want to upset anyone. And so it's really hard, but I realised it's absolutely necessary. But every time I brought it up, he would just say, nothing's changed. One time he said he's more attracted to guys. I'm like, what's that got to do with our friendship? Shouldn't affect it, the fact you're attracted to guys, unless all along it was just the fact he used to be attracted to me, because he's attracted to men and women, and then he lost attraction for me. That could be another explanation. He devalued me because he didn't see me as a... But even in the end, he told me he's still attracted to me, so that made no sense either. So it's just not good. So anyway, I had a therapist at the time already, because it was October last year I got this therapist, and because of the former friendship ending and the way it did with aggression, I started talking to the therapist about it at the beginning of August. Well, I dealt with it myself first, because the therapist was like away on training or holiday or something. I think it was holiday for 2 weeks. So I wasn't going to see him for like another 10 days or whatever. But when I saw him, instead of him being really empathetic and caring and worrying about my safety, like, are you okay? Are you safe? Is this person away from you? Are they out of your physical vicinity? Are they calling you or messaging you or coming to your home or anything? And have you got support outside of these therapy sessions? Are you safe? Instead of that, which is what I would naturally say to someone if I knew that person experienced aggressive behaviour with teeth snarling like a rabid dog, do you know what I mean, which could have led in physical fighting, I would be really alarmed by that. And I'm saying, are you safe? That would be my first priority if I was a therapist and they were my client. But instead of that, they were like, I'll put this incident to one side. They were helpful in other ways, weren't they? You've told me they helped you with this, that, and the other, And I'm like, what the hell? And so I didn't get that compassion. So this is a major red flag for me in a therapist. A therapist should be giving you empathy, and they should feel like they're on your side and supporting you. Not saying put a bad, a really bad behavior, unsafe situation to one side while they focus on what the person was useful and helpful with me with. I'm like, what the fuck? Excuse my language. Do you know what I mean? So Glenn Powell says, leaving your ex-therapist seems like you've already made great steps in healing yourself and moving forward. Best wishes. I only left the therapist yesterday now. It's gone over midnight, I think. Are we over midnight? Yeah, we're over midnight. Sorry, I had to click on my phone. So I'm just going to chat to just read some messages. Mixed Green Alien. Maybe he likes pushing your buttons in a sadistic way. I don't know. I am right. So, okay. So, I don't know. I just he's autistic, but he's always had empathy, because I know autistic people usually struggle with empathy, but in the past he's always had empathy, and I was like thinking, because obviously that adds another layer of complexity, because I was always very aware he's autistic, so I always kind of used to think of him all the time, the way I talked to him and the way I made sure that I was trying to be as understanding as possible and things, you know what I mean? Because I know that can add difficulties, but he's avoidant as well, so it's kind of hard, because I have had little autistic friends before, and I usually understand them, and they do think differently, and some of them lack empathy, not because they're purposely doing that, but the thing with him that struck me is how empathetic he was, and he wasn't fitting into what I would usually say was normal for an autistic person in that way. He was usually really empathetic and caring, going, oh, I'm more worried about you, I hope you're safe and stuff like this, and it went from that to the opposite. So I really don't know. I just think he didn't care about me much in the end. And he, instead of thinking about my safety and me first, he just was, I don't know, it's really weird. It was almost like he was just bypass my feelings. And it's just very, very strange. I'm not saying bypass my feelings all the time, but you know what I mean? It was hard because when someone shows you care, as in looking after you, being there, doing shopping for you, being there when you're physically ill and stuff like that, it makes it feel like they're a nice person and care about you. But then when they do stuff like that, then it makes you think like they don't care at all. Like, why would they want to see the property and not even kind of flinch at what I was telling them about what happened to me in terms of abuse? It doesn't make sense. So it's like very contradictory and completely opposites. These are like the same person explaining exhibiting two completely different behaviors, which gets very confusing. It's like, does this person care about me? Because they're very caring in other ways towards me, or so it seems. And then it's like, but they don't seem to have any empathy about the abuse I went through, and it's actually wanting to look at the property that near where the abuse happened and where my life would be in jeopardy anyway, because I'd be near my other abuser. So it just doesn't make any sense to me. And so it was like this. It's like, really, one extreme way of caring, like, I'm here for you, doing hours of shopping for you, really caring about you and listening. And then the other extreme of like, no empathy. It's just like when it's like that, your mind is completely screwed because your reality is screwed. You're like, which one is it? And it's like this person is doing both. And you're like, what the hell? And so it gets very, very, very confusing. But when I go back to, when I'm talking about the therapist again, right? When the therapist showed a lack of empathy for the aggression, that to me is a red flag in a therapist, right? A therapist should be validating of your experience. They should understand that aggression is not acceptable, and that that you should feel like they're advocating for you and that your safety is a priority. You should feel emotionally safe with your therapist, that you can tell them the traumatic stuff you've been through and feel like they're on your side, not like they're minimizing or rationalizing bad behavior. So when I brought up the fact that about lies, the therapist was like, well, just withholding information from you is not the same as lying. And I was trying to explain that it's a form of deception. And anyway, he did lie anyway, for definite, at least 2 times that I know of. And he used to say he was a liar before I met him. That was my fault, I guess, for thinking he might not be that way anymore. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, but, because usually, for example, if it was a dating scenario and someone said they lied, I would immediately be like, well, I'm not interested. But I wasn't with this person because I didn't think they would lie to me. But that's probably me being naive, So that's probably on me that I trust them. It's not on me that they lied. That's on them. So this was really difficult. So when the therapist is like minimizing, like lying and withholding information, these are red flags in the therapist because they're minimizing and rationalizing the bad behaviors that the person caused me harm. Right? It's really, really bad, right? And this person helped me, admittedly, by their own admittance, not just because they cared, but because they want external validation and praise. Well, that is not a proper friendship, is it really? It's more like a transactional situation, because it's not like they cared about me unconditionally. That care came with conditions. Do you know what I mean? And so that's really painful for me. But, instead of the therapist like saying, I can understand how difficult that must have felt and you deserve better, you deserve friends and people around you who care about you unconditionally, not like you have to do something to get care from them. Instead of saying that, he just says, oh, well, at least he was honest. I'm like, just because he was honest doesn't mean to say the behavior is right. So these were all red flags on the therapist. The therapist, in effect, was I felt supporting the person who, my former friend, who was not good to me in the end, and had these traits and, you know, bad behaviors. And I said to him in my final session with him that this is red flag behavior from a therapist, you know, from him, the therapist himself. And I realized that I think he's got avoidancy tendencies himself. This was hard for me to say to a therapist because he didn't want to label things. I said, I need a therapist who's going to call out bad behavior, saying aggression is never okay. Lying is not okay. Right? And neither is withholding information relevant to the connection you have with someone when they know that they're withholding it, because it would, you know, they're purposely withholding information that, you know, would be important to the connection. It's not like they're withholding information like they had a boiled egg for breakfast. Do you know what I mean? And so the therapist, in effect, was replicating the very patterns of, you know, like deflection, minimization, rationalization of bad behaviors. And I was having to constantly convince him of my perspective because he clearly didn't understand it on these things. All these things are red flags in the therapist. They're repeating the patterns that I've just been through with the former friend. They're like basically supporting what he did, and that's awful. So I know that I'm not emotionally safe to process things with him when he is displaying the very behaviors that I've tried to get away from since the beginning of August. And I don't want anything to do with that type of person who minimizes and rationalizes bad behavior, who deflects, you know. And he's like, oh, well, I said about, you know, I don't know why you're not calling out bad behaviors. A good therapist should call out bad behaviors. But he's like, oh, well, I don't want to, you know, labeling things. Because I said, why are you not calling out aggression as bad behavior? Why not call out as lying as a bad behavior? He goes, oh, well, sometimes it's not good to label things. And I'm like saying, the fact you don't want to label things, you know what I mean? That's not even labels. This is universal truths of things that are not good behaviors to have. These are universal truths. It's not about labels. But not wanting to label something is an avoidant tendency. It's an avoidant trait. And I said this to him. I have studied things about attachment styles. I'm not an expert in it, but I have got knowledge. I'm in the Love Life Club. There's courses on there in it. There's training and coaching. Right? I've been in there for over a year now. Like, this is my second year. I purposely want to stay in there. So I get this training, right? I have got, you know, there's some training on narcissistic abuse in there as well, right? And I've understood other things because of the trainings I've had. I've had Stop Abuse for Everyone trained. SAFE is the organisation's called, you know, in recognising patterns of abuse. And so this is like really like this therapist was red flagging. I'm like seeing red flags, and particularly on the last session I had last week with him, it became so apparent that I'm struggling to get him to understand my perspective. And that's what happened with my former friend in the end. He went back to someone, decided to reconnect with someone who deceived me and betrayed me for the whole 5 years of that entire friendship that he was witness to. And this person devalued him. And I said, I don't understand why you'd go back to someone who even devalued you. It doesn't make any sense. You know, and I see that as a betrayal if you're going back to someone who knew hurt me. So I don't think I can be friends with you anymore. And I don't see how that is possible even. Do you know what I mean? So I was struggling to get that former friend to understand my perspective. In the end, I gave up realizing I don't need to struggle to get someone to understand my perspective. If they don't understand my perspective, they don't value my worth or value me. You know, and with the therapist, if I am trying to get him to understand my perspective, he's not understanding it. Clearly, we're not aligned. I told him in the end, I said, we've got different personality types, clearly. I think we've got different attachment styles. I think you've got an anxious attachment, I said to him. And I said to him, I think you've got avoidant attachment because I'm anxious attachment. I think you've got avoidancy traits. I said, you'd be a great therapist for my ex-friend. Because, you know, rationalising, minimising bad behaviour, not understanding my perspective, you know what I mean? I said, it's all the same patterns. I can't even believe this is happening in therapy. Unbalanced friends is not a good thing, you know. But the therapist was mirroring the patterns of behavior I'm trying to get away from and heal from. I'm trying to heal from people who are deceptive, withholding information, people who are liars, people who minimize and minimize bad behaviors and deflect away from them. You know, people who I have to, like, you know, explain myself to over and over again to try and get them to understand my perspective. Why am I doing that? It's just better to walk away. In the end, I realised it was better to walk away from my former friend. I'm like, why am I even stood here trying to convince this person? If I don't, if you're not sure of my worth, that's fine. So yeah, I just decided that this therapist was no good. I actually told him to his face, which is so brave. I was so scared about going in there, because I knew I was emotionally unsafe with the therapist. And he's like, why did you even turn up? I'm curious, like, why didn't you say to the receptionist, I'm not going to show up? I said, because he said, you feel safe here then. I said, well, you're not, this to the therapist. I'm like, well, you're not being aggressive to me. You're not being horrible to me. And I said, this is about trusting myself. I know at any point I can go out that door and leave. I said, but you're not giving me a reason to leave because you're actually sat listening to what I'm saying. So yeah, that's when he said to me, I still love to be your therapist. And, if you still want to go ahead and you can think about it for another week. I said, no, it's just prolonging the agony. And so I didn't want to do that. I said, it's not healthy for me coming to see you anymore. And that's why I had to leave for my own good. But it wasn't easy doing that, but I knew it was the right thing to do. And one thing I did learn is that I kept saying, I'm struggling to get you to understand my perspective, which means I can't work through my trauma in a healthy way. It feels like you don't trust me. When you like are not understand my perspective, it feels, and he also said the other person, the former friend, isn't in the room to give his perspective. I said, but all the trauma I've been through, none of the people who've been abusive to me are going to be in the room ever. So I can't process any trauma with you because none of the people are going to be here to give their side of the story. And this echoes what I've had in the past where like, there's two sides to every story. That's how I ended up staying in abusive situations. Because when I was saying my what was happening, instead of being met with, oh my God, like you should get the hell out of that situation, this person's not safe for you, I was met with, oh, well, there are two sides to every story, and so I was always brought up to understand the side of my abusers. I was always conditioned to understand the side of my abusers and abusive people, to think about their perspective, think about the good things in them, think about all they do for me and all the rest of it. That's why I've been trained that way. So that's why it's difficult for me to leave, and also difficult for me to fully recognize, because I'm trained to see the good in people that are not good. And so that can be really, really hard. I've been conditioned like that, wired to think that way, to not trust myself and to trust people who are not good for me because, like their opinion's better or something, And so the therapist was like mirroring back that self-doubt. Instead of making me feel empowered and saying this is not right and it's good that you walked away, and aggression is never acceptable, lying is never acceptable, deception's never acceptable. I'm sorry that this person basically gaslighted you for the whole nearly 2 years. He didn't even want to say it was gaslighting. And when I said about I don't understand why you don't want to call out bad behaviors, about for example, the lying and the aggression, which is never acceptable. These are universal truths, because he said, well, I don't want to label things. Labels are not usually helpful and not necessarily always helpful. I said, but these are universal truths about bad behaviors. It's not about labeling. And then, I explained to him about things, and he was like, well, I don't understand, why, he goes, people react different ways to lies. And he goes, and I don't understand why you're so upset by, your former friend lying to you. I don't understand that. And I'm flabbergasted. I said, well, that's precisely the point. You don't understand me. And I said, clearly we're not on the same, we're not aligned with this. And I definitely can't move forward. I'm not emotionally safe when we're not aligned, and you don't understand why I'm upset about someone lying to me. Right? And then he reveals that he works with prisoners. And afterwards, when I come away, I thought, of course you are not. You're around people all the time in prison that assume that they lie, because that's why they're there in the first place. They've been hurting people and lying about it. So of course they're not going to react to lies like, there's much wrong, because that's what they do in their everyday life. That's why they're in prison. So yeah, it's just like I said, to me, this is you're just red flagging me. I said this to the therapist, you're just red flagging me. And it's hard. And he said, oh, well, some therapists wouldn't be able to sit here with what you said. They wouldn't be like me, so calm. I'm like, I know, some of them would get defensive and some of them would not be nice, but obviously I can leave at any point. So, you know what I mean? So this is what I said to him, and I told him the truth. I said, all this is just mirroring what I've just, the very thing I'm trying to get away from and heal from. So I can't heal from it with basically having him as my therapist. I can't do that. It's not safe for me. It's not emotionally safe when he's not supporting me. He's not advocating for me. He's not being compassionate as much as I need, not being as empathetic like I need him to be. Your therapist should feel like a team player. You feel valid. You should be validated, especially when you go through narcissistic abuse, deception, lies, manipulation, all this type of stuff, right? I've been through a lot of narcissistic abuse, and I said to him, I've got to deal with a lot of other trauma, not just this. And the other trauma, like, which I've told you some stuff about, is the physical violence and stuff. It's even worse. I said, and the fact that I can't even, these patterns are being repeated with this particular thing, when I've got even more trauma in the past, I can't do it safely with him, the therapist. And so I said, I can't do it. I said, it's sad, but I can't do it. And I said I was really upset, but I'm going to be, because I've been seeing this therapist for a year. But the thing is, we weren't talking about this deep emotional stuff then. And I said, I even feel it when I'm talking to you about the deep emotional stuff. I feel an avoidancy in you, like you don't really want to talk about it. When you don't want to label things, that's a characteristic of someone who's avoidant. They don't like labeling things. Why don't they like label things? Because they have to be accountable and responsible then if they label something, right? People who are avoidant want to avoid accountability. They want to avoid responsibility. So therefore they don't want to label things, because if they label things, then they have to be accountable and responsible to that. So by not labeling things, it enables them to have like fluidity in the way they are, rather than saying, no, this isn't acceptable. So yeah, it was awful to have that experience with that therapist. But when I talked to a centre manager afterwards, I said, look, I really need someone who understands narcissism and narcissistic abuse, because what can happen is a person can be really nice in one way and charming, and then they can be really not nice in another way, right? And there's subtle patterns, there's subtle things you can notice with people who are narcissistic or avoidant. There's things they overlap, narcissism and avoidancy, by the way. I did actually say that to the therapist. I said narcissism and avoidancy, they overlap. Some of the characteristic traits, which, I was telling the therapist that, you know what I mean? Because it's true, they do. They overlap. And so, it's not good. But I clearly cannot have a therapist dealing with the difficulties I've had when he actually mirrors the behaviours that are unhealthy for me, that I'm trying to heal from. He's actually causing more trauma. It's like traumatizing me more. I mean, I had some dark thoughts in the last week. Started self-blaming again and having doubt, and you know what I mean? This is not healthy for me. I said to him, I can't be doing that. I can't be having things like that in my mind. It's not good for me. Do you know what I mean? So when it gets to the stage where a therapist is making you feel like you're having dark thoughts, doing something, not being in this world anymore, this type of thing, it's really bad. And so I spoke to the centre manager about this, and we agreed that I'm more advanced than he is, the therapist, because I said I didn't want to say that, because she said, I think you need someone who has at the same level as you, with your knowledge of narcissism and domestic violence and stuff, or a bit further advanced than you, to help you, because she said these are just general counsellors. So she said they're not trained. So she told me about another organisation, SAFE, which I've been to before, which I told you I did a pattern changing course with them, and she told me to go back to that. But they do individual counselling now, so I contacted them, but I don't know if I'm going to get anywhere with that, or if it's better to seek out something else specifically to do with narcissism and, difficult relationships and stuff like that, with terms of narcissism, avoidancy, crossover, and all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, I think, when a therapist is red flagging, I said it's so obvious. Like when I left therapy last Monday, it all came to a head. I understood fully that I'm trying to struggle to get him to understand my perspective, and it was true because he admitted he couldn't understand why I was so upset about my former friend lying to me. He didn't understand why I was so upset and affected by that. And I'm thinking, this is certainly not the therapist for me when he doesn't. So he confirmed that he definitely doesn't understand me, which is what I felt, because the penny dropped last week. I'm like, oh, I'm constantly struggling to get him to understand me. And if you're struggling to get someone to understand you, they don't understand you. And I thought to myself in the end, why am I even going to this therapist anymore? I should just be walking away like I did from my former friend. When, I shouldn't be having to get them to understand my perspective. Clearly they don't trust me. They don't, and they don't have the same perspective as me, which if they don't have the same perspective as me, all good and well, but they need to not be in my life, right? Because I know the aggressive behavior is never acceptable. It's threatening. It can lead to very much physical violence, which I felt, and it's totally unsafe. You're not emotionally or physically safe with someone who displays aggression with teeth like a rabid dog and this lot in your face, basically. It's just horrible. And a person who does that is capable of all sorts of stuff. And I've never seen the former friend. I've seen the former friend have outbursts, emotional outbursts, but not the aggression to go with it. And so it's just really, really, really disconcerting. But yeah, so definitely the therapist had to go. It was still upsetting for me because obviously I was disappointed that I've gone to get help, and once again I met by the opposite of what I need. I met with someone who's reinforcing the very harmful behaviours that hurt me in the first place. At my expense, basically, you know what I mean? And so it's awful. So I just wanted to explain this, because if you have a therapist or counsellor and you think something is off about their behaviour, I want you to refer to this video, come back to it if you need to, and think, what was off about that therapy session? Like, a therapist should not be minimizing your experience and rationalizing bad behaviors. They should not be deflecting. They should not be making you feel like you have to struggle week after week to get them to understand your perspective. There was other things like incongruence, like the therapist would say it'd be, it's sad because he genuinely cared about me, which I could see that he seemed to like talking to me. He seemed to be really smiley when, he saw me, and he seemed to genuinely like me as a person. But I think it's more of an admiration in some respects, because what then happened is when he didn't immediately, after I told him about the aggression, he didn't immediately say, "Are you safe? Are you safe, Sandra? You're my priority. Are you safe? Are you away from that person physically? Is that person anywhere near you? Are they messaging you or coming near your home?" That would be my first instinct, even as an empathetic human being. And so it's really, really important that is she drunk? I don't know who you're speaking about. I don't drink any alcohol, so I don't know who you're talking about, but don't be so rude. And so anyway, going back to what I was saying, I'm definitely not drunk or whatever. I don't take drugs or drink or anything. I don't have to explain myself to you. So yeah, going back to serious things. Oh, I'm just going to get rid of people that are being rude in comments. Do you know what I mean? Asking me really personal stuff has got nothing to do with anyone's business, So anyway, like I said at the beginning of this chat, we need to keep it respectful. My community is a safe haven for people to talk about this type of stuff, and I do not want people being rude and, coming in comments being disrespectful to me or to the people in my community. I will endeavour to keep this place a very safe space for people. Right, let's continue. So my point is if you have a therapist that is red flagging you, they've got traits of avoidancy and things are not good, then you need to fire your therapist. I'm in an R-ing about should I do this or not, but everything was screaming in my body, and that's another sign, right? So when the therapist is saying they care, but then when I told them about the aggression, they didn't immediately think of my safety as a priority. It was all about putting that incident to one side, that one-off incident, and thinking about the help that person gave me. This is like really the wrong attitude to have, and this is the opposite of care. If someone genuinely cares about you, they'll ultimately want you to be safe, not just look pleased to see you, which is more of an admiration, right? So I think it's very important. I mean, I sent the centre manager, this was the first thing I did. I said, I feel I keep struggling to have my perspective understood, and the unhealthy behaviours that person had towards me are not being acknowledged with empathy for how those affected me, which makes it hard for me to move forward and with healing in a safe and understanding space. So you do need you do need bad behaviors to be acknowledged. You do need abuse to be acknowledged and said, this is not acceptable. These people should not be behaving like that towards you. And because it's not going to be safe for you to open up about, abuse and harmful behaviors if the person doesn't even accept and agree with you that they're harmful. If they don't, that's a complete mismatch. It means the therapist is really not aligned with you. And you have to leave that situation because it's not safe for you to be in. Right? It wasn't even really safe for me to be there. The only reason it was safe is because I made it safe for myself. And I talked to the manager before and I knew I could leave at any time. I mean, the therapist wasn't horrible to me. He listened, he even, made notes and said, oh, you got a brilliant brain. But there was times even from the beginning that I felt I was more advanced than the therapist in my knowledge about this stuff. And I said to him at the beginning, are you trained in narcissism and abuse? He said, no, but I deal with trauma like in school. So you must visit schools and prisons. And so he said, I can help you. And I said, I was just a bit concerned because, narcissism is a whole minefield, because narcissistic people don't play by the same rules as everyone else. Right? They're very cunning. And I did give an example about my former long-term ex. Right, he was once on a train with me, and there was this girl who was being harassed by her boyfriend, and he was being very aggressive, looked like he was going to hit her. So that person at the time, now my ex, long-term ex, he intervened and shouldered up to the guy and was like this and leave her alone. And everyone on the train thought he was a hero. Yeah, he's such a great guy. He was simultaneously at one point on that train. Well, I say simultaneously, obviously it wasn't exactly at the same time, so maybe simultaneously is not the right word to use, but if you take the whole train journey, he was actually out in the corridor threatening me in the train corridor, coming up to me and threatening me and being aggressive towards me in the train, the same train journey. And it was just absolutely awful that everyone on the train thought he was a hero and saved the girl from harm, yet he's causing me harm and being aggressive to me. The very behaviour he stopped the other girl from having to be escalated into physical violence, he was displaying that to me in between the carriages. This is where the door is, a more private area where no one was there. Because obviously what they do in public, narcissistic people, the charming, the heroic people, when they're behind closed doors, are a very different story. And so, I was wanting to process that trauma with the therapist. Clearly, I can't process that trauma with the therapist when, the therapist can't even understand what bad behaviour looks like. Can't even, say aggressive behaviour is not acceptable. It's a bad behaviour. It's an abusive behaviour. He can't even say that. So how can I process trauma with these things when he's not even accepting it and wanting to call it out for what it is? And in fact, he's making my feelings feeling validated and me question myself by going, oh, I can't understand why you're so upset about someone lying to you, or your former friend lying to you. It's like, if he doesn't understand why I'm so upset about someone lying to me that's meant to have been my friend, I said it breaks trust in a connection. Lying breaks trust in a connection. It's not good. It's really bad. So this is why I fired my therapist, basically. And now I'm trying to look for someone who specializes in narcissistic abuse. But I do have the Love Life Club still. There are courses in there, so I might just have to go back over what I've already been, what I've already learnt before. And I'm considering like trying to get more support in that area. So it's really difficult because narcissists are very, very cunning, because they can be beautifully charming to the outside world because they have to keep up an appearance. They have to seem helpful and kind to the outside world, where really they might have an ulterior motive. Might have a mask for doing something. They have this ego that they need to preserve, and they need everyone to think that they're the good ones and not or the victim, whatever victim or a person they're abusing mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever they're doing. They have to have people believe that the person they're harming is the crazy one and the person at fault. And for me to be able to stick up to a therapist and actually say, well, you're red flagging me and this is why, to the therapist about his own behaviour, is, I guess, a triumph for myself. There are different types of narcissists. Yes, Heather, you're quite right. There are vulnerable narcissists, which I've learnt more and more about. These are the ones that do play the victim and basically say everyone, like, they've got, they play the victim as in they're never at fault, and they usually hide under mental health disguise. They can, like, they can have like depression and stuff like this. It's hard because obviously people do definitely have depression, and they're not, just because they've got depression doesn't mean to say they're a narcissist. But there is something called the vulnerable narcissist. You can look it up because, like I said, I'm not a professional in this specific place. But yes, vulnerable narcissism I think is something I might have well experienced in my life. But vulnerable narcissism is more people who have like mental health problems, who might even be self-depreciating. They might say, oh, I'm such a bad person, or, oh, you don't want to be around me, because that's the way they get you to feel sorry for them. So you automatically have empathy and sympathy for them, and you feel that you feel like they're just self-depreciating. And if you've ever had depression, I had depression for years. I didn't used to feel good about myself. But I'm empathetic, right? And I didn't used to feel good about myself. So when someone comes to me and says, oh, I'm feeling like I'm a bad person, I'm not a good person, right? In the past, particularly, I've like tried to understand that person, like why they feel that way. That probably it's childhood trauma they've been through that's made them feel that way. And, and they're really not that type of person. They've just been through some difficult shit, right? Just difficult scuffs, use my language, right? And I care about a person. I want them to feel good about themselves, because I had that and I wasn't actually a bad person. It was just the way I was being treated. And I didn't have any tools to understand the difference between when there was something actually that I was doing wrong and it was actually other people, the way they were treating me. Now, as an adult who understands more about this stuff, we can't change the way people treat us, but we can change how we react to them. But also there is cause and effect. Like, to say that, oh, you shouldn't be affected by anything someone else does to you. For me, that if you're an empathetic person, that's not going to work, because you can't not be who you are. And narcissistic people prey on people who are very empathetic, very kind, very caring, very understanding. I exhibit those traits, right? It doesn't mean to say I'm not firm, because I am. But I do have extreme capacity for empathy. I have a lot of patience. I care about people, and because I'm trained as well by people who have been abusive towards me and narcissistic, I'm trained to spot the good things about narcissists and abusers, the focus on the good points. Then it's kind of like I'm even more vulnerable and susceptible to a narcissist or abuser coming my way and latching onto me in that respect. I know that doctors and police officers can be narcissistic traits. Interesting. Doctors and police officers can be narcissistic traits. Well, with narcissistic traits, what happens is narcissists get very high up in businesses. So it's generally, from my research understandings, people who are in CEO positions, like Fortune 500 companies, people that are really up the chain of having a lot of money, right? And they work for companies all themselves, and they're very self-centered in that way. They're very money-driven. I'm not money-driven. I'm not even monetized on this channel, right? Some of the stuff I'm telling you, people put behind a paywall. and they'll charge you for it. It doesn't mean to say I'm not going to ever have products and services to sell, because, you know, you have to like be able to feed yourself and clothe yourself. You know, I think it's ludicrous to think no one should ever, you know, be paying for content or stuff like that. That's not true. That's not what I believe. But I don't do this channel for money, because, to be honest, at the moment I don't really hardly get anything. It's like, people can buy my books, for example. I have these books like Asexual Perspectives book, for example, stuff like that, which is on Amazon. So, you know, and they just like, what, I might get a few quid from it if I'm lucky. I mean, there's hardly any markup on this because it's a big book. Like, I think I saw one recently and got £1.49 from it or something. Do you know what I mean? That's not really going to get me very far. But I'm not even monetized on this channel at the moment. Whether that'll change in the future, I don't know. But I don't have enough watch time hours, for example, because I do a lot of shorts content on here. But my main purpose of this channel is to be able to empower individuals and give them a voice and make people feel that they can be their authentic self. They don't need to be this perfectly polished person who puts a load of makeup on and has to have a certain body type and has to hide who they truly are. I mean, that's what narcissists are great at. They really want you to not understand what they're actually about. They want to put this mask on so that they seem kind and caring, but underneath the surface, they're not really like that. They're very selfish people, self-centered, egotistical. Like, some of them do actually loathe themselves. Some of them love themselves. Depends which one you get. The vulnerable narcissist tends to be more self-loathing in front of people, if you know what I mean. So this is why it's hard to spot them, because I know I used to feel really bad about myself years ago. I don't anymore in general. But that's why I know that therapist, I had to stop seeing. I couldn't continue to see him because he was making me doubt myself more, question myself, question my feelings, question my reality. And he was supporting the very behaviors that I'm trying to get away from and heal from. And so he's clearly not the one to process the trauma that he's replicating. It's basically like re-traumatizing you, right? So intentionally or unintentionally, that's what he was doing. I mean, I don't think he went out to like intentionally do that, really, but the fact that he's even got the character traits to do that is a red flag for me. Do you know what I mean? Because I said I think he's got avoidant tendencies. I think he's a avoidant attachment style. I still think I'm right. He goes, oh, well, you know, there's loads of videos on the internet and people diagnose people and it's not really for you to diagnose. I said, yeah, you're right. I'm not here to diagnose. It's up to you what you know, decide about yourself in that respect. But I just see the pattern of avoidance in you. And, you know, I have had training on this in the Love Life Club, for example, and the traits you have are avoidancy tendencies. That's the way they come across to me. That's what I'm feeling. As well, when I try to talk about deep emotional stuff, because avoidant people don't want to talk about deep emotional feelings, emotions, like trauma. They don't want to deal with that. They want to avoid it because it's too painful. They want to put that off, avoid it at all costs, right? I've learned that true healing is being in the pain for a certain amount of time. You don't stay in the pain because you just spiral out of control if you get it too much, but you have to have an equal balance of dealing with the current situation. Like, I go out, self-date, get on with my life, do weights to build my strength for my spine that's broken and this type of stuff, right? So I'm building myself up, right? But I have to have some time to process difficult emotions. Like, the friendship ended at the beginning of August, but it's still shocking that someone could change that drastically and that I could see a behavior in them that I hadn't witnessed before. And there's all gaslighting and blaming me and everything else they did at the end, right? Which is narcissistic traits. Like, this just shocked me. Just because someone's got narcissistic traits doesn't mean they're a full-blown narcissist. People can have narcissistic traits without actually being a full-blown narcissist. So that's why it's even harder sometimes. But any bad behaviors like this, any narcissistic traits are really not good, right? You don't want to be having someone who's blaming you, gaslighting you, and all this lot, and blurring your reality. It's just really horrible. And what happens is like, a person will say, oh, things have always been. I'm like, well, you never used to be like that. Oh, but I was like that, and you know differently. That again is a form of gaslighting. So people that are high in authority usually are often narcissists because they have worked their way up by this kind of like very charming, egotistical behavior, and people don't see them for who they truly are. and the way that they're very self-serving and very focused on themselves and driven often by money and greed in that way means they get to the top a lot quicker, and they'll trample all over people to get what they want, and they'll stop at nothing to do it, right? Because they've got self-serving behaviors, whatever's good for them. They don't really care so much about other people. It's like whatever's good for them, they come first. What they want comes first. Money and power is very important to them because they can use people that to manipulate people and to have power over people, right? So they often get in positions like top-notch positions. We have narcissistic people who are famous. I can tell narcissists usually. I can tell a couple of them, and it just makes me like, I'm like, oh my god. And people think these people are charming and nice, and I'm like, I can see straight through these people now. I'm like, it's so glaringly obvious to me by the mannerisms I even see in photographs of them, the way they behave, what the other person says about the way they were. I'm like, they're just narcissistic. And some of these are, I know a couple of the actors I would say are narcissists. I'm not professional to diagnose that, but I definitely say they've got narcissistic traits, and I think they probably have a narcissistic personality disorder. But it's not, I'm not a trained professional, so I can't exactly say that. I have no authority to say that in that way, but I just see the traits because they're very big charmers to people. They're very charming. They can easily get over someone as well and move on very, very quickly usually. Do you know what I mean? Or they seem to be able to. You know, the person that, you know, like all of a sudden things end and like just moved on to someone else really quickly, right? But people who understand healing, we have to feel all our emotions, right? If you suppress and repress, it ends up in an explosion, right, of aggression and other stuff, which is really unhealthy. So we have to have time where we sit in pain. That's why I cry sometimes on this channel. I was in tears earlier. I was really upset because I had to leave the therapist, not because I knew it wasn't the right decision for me, but because I had to do that because, again, I'm having someone in my life who's meant to be a respected, like, professional that I'm seeing who's got red flag behaviour, who's got avoidancy tendencies, and who's doing the very behaviours that I'm trying to get away from that are no good for me. And so I was disappointed. I was upset that I trusted that person as well. I had a lot of trust in that person over the time I spent with them. But since the beginning of August, I didn't even realise till last week, oh my gosh, I've been having to try to convince them of my perspective and they're not understanding me. And they practice something called, which is really important. I'll get this sheet out. They practice, have I got it here? They practice humanism, right? So this is, I don't know if I've got a sheet on this. But they practice humanism. And humanism is by Carl Rogers. I don't know if oh, here it is, right? This is very interesting. Carl Rogers, Humanistic Theory and Contribution to Psychology, right? This is what they follow. This is what they're supposed to practice, right? And they're supposed to do and put into practice, right? So this is very interesting because this is what he follows. And I thought, because of this, that he's going to be the ideal therapist for me, right? Heather, I'm just thankful that I'm here to listen to you. Oh, thanks, Heather. Lots of love. I appreciate you. I appreciate you valuing my worth and understanding that I do understand a lot, even though it's difficult because I've always been trained to doubt myself. This is the problem. I struggle between knowing exactly what I'm talking about and having the confidence to execute that and saying, like, this is actually real. This is like, these behaviors are not good of the therapist. I struggle with that because I've always been trained and conditioned to have self-doubt, and I have to try and keep constantly overcoming that. It's like I know these things, I'm certain, but yet there's still something that's like in my programming, in my wiring, in my subconscious, or that comes to conscious thought that, oh, like there ends up being some self-doubt, even though I know. You have to try and get used to listening to your body. Like when I came away from therapy, and even in the therapy session, because he was saying I care and I'm still happy to be your therapist, it's making me think, like, have I made a mistake? He's saying he cares, right? He's saying he cares. And then when I left the therapy session, I was crying for a while, and I knew I had to calm down before I spoke to the centre manager and had to just have some food. I spoke to Matthew AI because I use him to process emotions. Matthew AI is an AI tool, which is a clone of Matthew Hussey in the Love Life Club. And I always think it's better to calm down and not address something when you're in a high emotional state, unless you have to address it in the moment, right? If you have to address it in the moment, you have to address it. But if you can wait, it's better. And so, that's what I did. But there's always like something, because I've been trained to see other people's point of view, abusers' points of view all the time, and narcissistic points of view, and avoidancy points of view, and I'm trained on that in my brain because of faulty wiring, if you want, that people have put there in my brain, and to doubt myself and not believe in myself. I there's always kind of a default where it goes back to a bit of that. But I am crystal clear that what I've done is exactly right. And I believe wholeheartedly that these character traits in the therapist are not good for emotional processing and not good for me. I would argue they're not good for anyone, to be perfectly frank with you. But I just said to him, like, we're clearly different attachment styles, I believe. He hasn't confessed he's an avoidant attachment, but he didn't deny it either. He didn't say, I'm definitely not an avoidant attachment style. And, you know, all he said was, it's not up to me to diagnose him. And that's fine. It's not up to me to diagnose him. He's perfectly right about that. I agree with him on that. But I can still say I feel he's anxious. I'm anxious attachment. I can feel he's avoidant attachment because the patterns, wanting to not label things, wanting to minimize bad behaviors, not hold people accountable, you know. Why? Because it means that he doesn't even have to hold himself accountable then, does he? Do you know what I mean? So, yeah. It's disappointing. I was disappointed. I was upset for me. I'm entitled to be upset for me. I've trusted this therapist, and it wasn't until I started doing the emotional deep work with what happened with my former friend that I was able to see the character traits of this therapist, because I hadn't been having to deal with this stuff. I've been talking about all the stuff that happened with Pip and Universal Credit and how I was stressed and, you know, the toll it was taking my body and mind and stuff like that. Not deep emotional trauma work. So I wasn't aware that he was like this in his character traits. This was kind of hidden from me because he was very good at, like, when I said I'm really doing well on this channel and going over like 1.5 million views, I'm up for finalists for Speaker of the Year and Diversity Inclusion Awards. Oh, the voting's just opened, by the way, for that, so I will be posting about that soon and talking about it soon in a different video, in a different post, but please do vote for me if you want to. And so I digress, I know. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, I know that therapist was no good for me in the end. And I'm really glad I saw that, you know, and I'm able to have the centre manager basically saying to me, you really want someone who's like the same level you or more advanced, because these are just general counsellors. And I'm saying, I said to him, I'm glad you said that, because I have felt that I'm more advanced than him in my knowledge, but I didn't want to say that, you know. I felt that from the beginning with him, but I don't want to say that because I don't want to come across as egotistical. I always believe there's usually something to learn from someone else, whatever level you're at. And I thought maybe he knows some things that I could learn from, but really that's not actually been the case. I learned more from the centre manager in the over 1 hour I spoke to her last week about the therapist. I learned more from her in that one session. It felt like a whole therapy session I had with him the whole year, really, because most of it was just me talking, like a conversation with him before. And you know what I mean? So I just see really avoidant traits with him. And I said the penny dropped that maybe therapists are usually avoidant, because if they were anxious attached like me, they'd be constantly worried about their clients, their patients, you know. They'd be constantly worried about their clients. They'd be constantly thinking about them, and they'd be like full on in, you know, like feeling for them and everything. So maybe therapists need to be more avoidant, because then they don't get so emotionally involved with a person. You know what I mean? Maybe. And I thought maybe a lot of therapists are actually avoidant, which is not good though, because avoidancy is not good traits. It's not teaching you right things. Because a lot of people believe all negative emotions are bad, and there are people out there teaching this in the law of attraction. All negative emotions are bad, right? But the fact is, if you don't deal with negative emotions, they usually stay in your body anyway. So even if you're not trying to bring them to conscious thought and you're pretending like, oh, I don't have negative thoughts, right? I must keep negative thoughts at bay because I'll attract what I think about, right? I'm not saying that's wrong. If you just sit and think about negative stuff all the time, yes, you will get negative stuff come to you. I know that. I know I've changed my life around. I used to be very negative, and it just used to be bad, my life all the time. So there's definitely truth to that. But if you are just pretending and shoving down your emotions and the negative stuff in the name of law of attraction so as not to bring attention to it, you're actually still keeping it inside you. You're not letting it out and dissipate. And so therefore you'll still have that in you, and you're not actually processing and get rid of it. So it's not actually healthy for you. right? You've still got it within you, whether you're talking about it or not, right? So you need to get it out and release it. I feel better for releasing. I feel better for doing this live stream. I didn't even know I was going to do this, but I'm like, you need to do a live stream, son. You need to tell people about this, because there's other people out there that probably got terrible therapists, that are feeling really emotionally drained by their therapists, that aren't feeling supported, that are feeling really upset right now, and they're thinking they're the ones that are at fault because a therapist could never be at fault because they're infallible, but they're not. They're human beings like everyone else. I even said this to the centre manager last week, that everyone's a human being, and some therapists are just not going to be in alignment with the client because they have their own attachment style, they have their own issues, they have their own things. They're not a machine, they're not AI, right? They bring their own experiences to the table, they bring their own attachment styles to the table, and they bring their own problems to the table, even though they try not to. They can't help it. They're human beings, they're not machines. And people should be remembering this. All doctors, like school teachers, everyone is a human being with all our own flaws, with all our own weaknesses and all our own strengths, me included. And, you know, like, my greatest strength is empathy in some ways, but my greatest weakness is also empathy, because I'm empathetic to people who probably really don't deserve that much empathy, or who use it to their advantage and manipulate me, right? Or try to do that. Eventually I found out, but the quicker I find out, the better. Right, but it took 3 months to understand what was happening with this therapist. That, oh, he doesn't understand me. I'm struggling to get him to understand me. I'm having to convince him of my perspective. When you're having to convince someone of your perspective, it's time to leave, basically. You can have a conversation about it, but if you're repeatedly trying to say stuff and that, you know, you'll feel like you're having to convince them, it's like they don't trust you. And they don't value your worth, so it's better to just walk away. But I did the brave thing of facing him head on, which was really hard for me. I said that to centre manager. The centre manager was lovely. She was going, well done you, or well done for actually going in there and being able to have the courage to do that. Because I said it confirmed exactly what I thought it did, that he really doesn't understand me. Actually, you said the words, I don't understand why you get upset so much about someone lying to you. Like your former friend lying to you. I don't understand. Like, why are you so upset about it? Because people wouldn't like react the way you do. Not everyone will react the way you do. And to my mind, I'm like, I said the fact you don't even understand why I'm upset about someone lying to me. Here's my friend. I said, you know, clearly we're not on the same page. You know, we're just not in alignment anymore with this. You know, and I've got to process a lot of trauma. So it's not safe for me, emotionally safe for me to do that. Do you know what I mean? So, anyway, I want to go through this humanistic psychotherapy because I think it's very interesting. So this is what he does. This is what he says he does. But I told him blatantly he doesn't do all this, right? So what he's supposed to practice, what he's trained on, is Carl Rogers' humanistic theory, right? And I thought, as an individualist, and I like to play my own rules of life without intentionally hurting people. I'm not saying I'm never going to hurt people because I'm a human being, right? That would be ridiculous of me to say that. But I try to not hurt people, but you're going to hurt some people. I might have hurt the therapist's feelings, for example. I don't know, but you know what I mean? But the centre manager told me to state directly what I was feeling and thinking without worrying about the therapist's feelings because he has his own therapist. So that's what I did. But anyway. So Carl Rogers' humanistic theory and contribution to psychology. What are the 6 core conditions of Carl Rogers? Right, I got this off the internet, but I took it to him. He goes, I already know all this. I'm like, but this is not what's happening, right? Some of it, but not the really, like, difficult, you know, like, not the things that are really necessary, you know, like. So basically, Carl Rogers is identified 6 core conditions. I'm reading from this, right? 6 core conditions. You can look this up yourself. For constructive personality change in person-centered psychotherapy. Well, in person-centered therapy, it says. It doesn't actually say psychotherapy. Psychological contact between client and therapist. The client being in a state of incongruence. The therapist's congruence, genuineness, the therapist experiencing unconditional positive regard, non-judgmental acceptance, the therapist experiencing and communicating empathetic understanding of the client's internal world, and the client perceiving the therapist's unconditional positive regard and empathy, most of which didn't happen. Right, so I went through these and I said psychological contact, number 1, core pillar, right? A therapeutic relationship exists where the therapist and client are in contact. Well, yep, that ticks that box. Client incongruence. The client is experiencing a discrepancy between their self-concept and reality, often leading to anxiety and vulnerability. But I said I don't really think that's the case with me, because I have a lot of self-awareness and I've done a lot of work on myself. So I don't actually think that's probably the case with me. I don't feel like I don't know myself, or I'm disassociated from myself. I have had disassociation when it's like really stressed, but that's more like I'm not in touch with my soul and myself when I've got extreme stress. When I had all the universal credit cock up on their part, and I end up having to do 4 years worth of accounts in a very short period of time and have a couple of extensions, or they were going to stop my benefits. So that made me disassociate because it was so traumatic. It was constant, like, having to push myself to like work through hours of work that I didn't want to do, and I had to force my body into staying awake for longer than I should have done, and all this lot. So when that happens, when I'm really like in a very high state and stress and stuff, I can feel a disconnect with myself. But that's not because I really don't know myself. That's just because I'm in a state of survival mode on purpose, really, like or intentionally. Well, I don't go, I'm going to be intentionally like in survival mode in the sense that I saw it coming. I didn't see the mistake by the universal credit coming. That was their mistake. That was on them, but I had to pay for it basically with my time and energy and stress. So anyway, thank God that's all over. I only have to report my figures to them once a month now because I'm self-employed author, right? So, but it was a long, and obviously I was in that position more months ago, but, I would not say really there's a discrepancy between my self-concept and reality. Like, I wouldn't actually say that. So, but I do have anxiety. But anyway, so it probably wasn't even the case. But let's carry on. Therapist congruence. The therapist is genuine, integrated, and real in the relationship with their internal feelings matching their external expression. I said, I didn't know if that was true about him or not. So I can't make my mind up about that one. I don't know. I honestly don't know about that one. So, therapist unconditional positive regard. He definitely did not have this or do this. The therapist provides non-judgmental, warm acceptance of the client as a person, regardless of their actions or thoughts. Clearly not. Because he told me he doesn't understand why I'm upset about my former friend lying to me. And that I reacted in that way. Which is, that makes me question, like, oh, am I extreme? Am I oversensitive? Am I like, is that acceptable behavior, lying? Should I just accept it? You know what I mean? It makes me question my reality. So instead of it bringing me to myself, making more congruent with myself, actually blurs my reality and makes me think that he's suggesting that it's not that big a deal. That I'm making a bigger deal out of it than it really is. And that is a huge red flag in a therapist when they're making you feel that lying is basically acceptable, like it's not that much lying or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, in the very end, I said, I don't understand why you think aggression and lying's acceptable. And he's like, well, I don't think that way. I don't think they're acceptable. But I said, but you're not wanting to label it, as bad behavior. So it's just like, we're not in alignment, me and him. Anyway, so therapist empathetic and understanding. The therapist accurately understands and experiences the client's internal world from the client's perspective. I said this one he definitely does not do. 100%. He wasn't disagreeing. 100%. He did not understand my internal world. He did not understand me in this regard. I'm not talking about the general stuff. I'm talking about the nitty-gritty traumatic stuff that I needed to heal from, that he was basically causing me more trauma because of. So, he does not accurately understand me. He didn't understand me at all. When a person says, I don't understand why you're upset about someone lying to you, that's actually saying, I don't understand you. So he didn't understand my internal world and my perspective. In fact, I said, you make a great therapist for my former friend. Because, you know what I mean? Because obviously they're a good match, aren't they? Both avoidancy tendencies don't want to, like, spell out bad behaviours for what they actually are. Want me to, like, continue to struggle to get them to understand my perspective that they'll never understand because they just, like, in their own heads and think bad behaviour is fine or whatever. It's just, like, ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And so he's not practicing what he's saying he follows for years or whatever, what he's trained in. And then client perception. The client perceives the empathetic understanding, unconditional positive regard, definitely not happening, because he's not really empathetic, is he? Certainly not with this traumatic stuff. And he hasn't got unconditional positive regard for me whatsoever. Because, you know what I mean, he doesn't understand why I get upset about someone lying. Lying is not acceptable. Because once someone tells one lie, how much else are they telling you? How many other lies are they telling you? Right, this person said I can get a bus pass. Guess what? The council emailed me about some funding to do with disabilities, which I was able to access. They told me I didn't even know I was entitled to anything. And they told me I can get a bus pass. When he told me outright, no, you can't get a bus pass. Because I said to him, this was like, I think the week before the aggression. I said to him that, I think I can get a bus pass because I've seen other people have them. He goes, yeah, that's just for like blind people. I said, well, I know people with pensions got. He goes, yeah, you can't get one, no. No, you can't have one. And like now I'm like thinking, was that to keep me like stuck with him helping me so that I'd feel dependent on him? Because obviously if I got bus pass, I'm less dependent on him. I don't know. I don't know if he intentionally did that or not. I'd like to think he didn't. But he actually like loves buses. It's one of his things, you know? And so I'm like, how can he not know that I'm entitled to a bus pass? And the category said, no, you definitely can't have one. Like, you know, and he lied when he said he would never let the person who he decided to reconnect with come between us. And that was only about 2 weeks before. So, in fact, he was the one who decided to reconnect with them. And he actually asked me for reassurance. So I'm not even sure they'd want to hear from me. I'm like, well, they will do because they're that desperate for friends. Which is the truth. Not because they really care, because they really devalued him. And I kept saying, this person devalued you. You should have walked away from them before that you even found out that they were deceiving me. But no, they're gone back to them instead. Which means they haven't, you know, really, you know, if they're going back to someone who was like devaluing them. You know, we had a discussion about how I said I would never go back to someone who was like bullying you and horrible to you or whatever, or like deceived you and stuff like that and wasn't a good person to you. This deception person didn't bully me, but we ended up getting on to talking about that. And he's like, oh, you can talk to people who abused me or whatever and bullied me. It's fine because my friendship for you is unconditional. I'm thinking, well, it's really not unconditional. It's actually not unconditional from the point of view he's helping me and wanted praise and validation all the time for it. That's not unconditional, is it? Right? So what he was saying is just actually not true. And, you know, it's just not good. And if a person thinks that they should just be kind to abusers and bullies and stuff like that, it's just, something's definitely wrong there, right? It's just not good. And it doesn't, you know. Anyway, so that's basically why I fired my therapist, you know. And I wrote down what I want from a therapist, you know. Like, I wrote down that I want, this is all my notes I took, right? I went down that I, you know, like, so he didn't want to label aggression, just, you know, lies, gaslighting, anything I previously experienced. So that was no good. Because obviously I want someone who's going to hold the people accountable in the room of bad behaviour. So basically, if you've got a narcissist in your life or abuser or anyone like that, or you've had that, you're not going to go to the abuser or narcissist going, you know, oh, Heather's cuddling their dog, that's great, it's really good, it's very soothing for the nervous system. Cuddle a cuddly toy, you know, cuddle a blanket, you know. I'll probably be doing some like self-love stuff after this because it's been a hard day for me, but I felt like I needed to talk to you about this, you know. And it's hard knowing how much to share and not to share, but I'm just like, I just ad-lib. I just do what I think's right in the moment because that's how I work, intuitively and authentically, and I just talk from my heart and what I believe. Luckily, I'm very good at ad-libbing. I'm really good at talking and educating people in an ad-libbed way, better than being restricted with timings and stuff. I find it a lot harder. So that's why these live streams go on a long time. But we're here to have important discussions, right? In real time, rather than some scripted, like, preconditioned thing, right? I love how animals, they are healing. Oh, thank you, Heather. Yeah, I love animals too. Unfortunately, I haven't got any more. But, you know, I get to stroke a few dogs now and again, you know, in the streets. I'm like, oh, am I okay to stroke them? One person said in the last few months, oh, it's nice of you to ask me that. I'm like, oh, that's okay. Because I like to make sure it's up to the owners where I touch their dogs, unless they come bounding up to me. And they've already, like, basically touched me or whatever with my hand. And it was like when I was on the bus, was it a couple of weeks? No, it was last week, I think. I was going to say a couple of weeks ago, or it might have been the week before. I can't remember. Anyway, it was in the last 2 weeks. The guy had a dog, and it was sat on the opposite side of the bus to me, diagonally, and it kept looking at me, and I kept smiling, and then he came over. He had one of those long leads, you know, that you can pull in and pull out. Heather says she's listening. Thank you. So the dog came across from that side of the bus to my side for strokes. But I had to get off. I'm like, I got to get off soon. And some people got on the bus, so the dog went back. But it saw me, and it's like, I need to see Sandra. That's what its face was like. And it had a little waggly tail. It really wanted some, like, stroking. So, yeah. It's, you know, so I don't have my own pets, but it's nice to stroke other people's if they'll let you and they're safe to do so, you know. So anyway, I wrote a list because it's very important when you're, like, thinking about your therapist, if you've got a therapist yourself or counsellor, and you're trying to decide, like, what is it that's not working for you. It's very important going forward that you know what you do want, because otherwise you're just going to get the same repetition. It's not to say I'm not going to get another therapist that's no good for me. It's kind of hard to find good therapists to specialise in specifically narcissism, domestic violence. There's very specialism. And what, like, traditional counselling therapy usually teaches is to get the person to see the perspective of the other person, which is a perspective of basically an abuser, which is not on. You don't want to be getting someone to do that. But in traditional counselling, it's like if you had an argument with someone, for example, they're like, oh, well, let's just think about the way the other person was feeling when that happened, when you said that, or when that thing, you know, did happen. Like, let's look at the other perspective of the person. But the last thing you want to be doing, if you've had narcissistic abuse, it particularly is being trained to look at the other person's perspective. Because if you're an anxious attachment, particularly, which is what a lot of, you know, like, narcissists are going to prey on, like, anxious attachment, because we're more vulnerable, because we need security and we need reassurance, and they know that, and they can manipulate us more easily by that. They shouldn't be able to, but this is the truth of how the dynamic works. Often narcissists are avoidant as well. There's traits that overlap. So the way they control, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, with a narcissism, it's often consciously. With avoidancy, it's like less conscious, I would say. You know, but by knowing that you're vulnerable in that way and you need reassurance, when they take the reassurance away or don't give it to you anymore, that's how they can control and manipulate you more and make you unsafe and unsteady and unsure of yourself, and make you more feel like the crazy one and stuff. You know what I mean? And so it's very difficult. So that's why you have to try and heal our own attachment style with anxious attachment. But it's not easy. If you've really got anxiety, I've got an anxiety condition as well as anxious attachment, you know, you're going to have to try and find someone who's more sensitive to that type of attachment style. An avoidant person is the opposite of who you are usually. And that's why the anxious avoidant, we often get attracted to each other, because opposites attract, but we're often, like, really not good for each other. Because avoidant wants to avoid difficult conversations, dealing with difficult emotions, and go away from them. The anxious person wants to get them sorted. Like, I'm anxious. I really want to get it sorted now. I don't want to be thinking about it in 50 years' time. Like, this week has been hell for me in terms of, like, being upset and having irritable bowel syndrome and feeling down more. It's particularly, you know, like, the last, like, 48 hours when I knew I was going to have to speak to the therapist and tell him that I don't want to see him anymore. That's hard because I didn't feel emotionally safe going in that situation, but I felt like I had to, because the centre manager thought it was the best thing. I asked her advice, and she thought it'd be good for me to actually say my piece of what I really thought directly to the therapist. She thought that would be good for me to feel that. But I actually think it was more beneficial for him than it was for me, really, but the one good thing I got out of it was crystal clear clarity that he does not understand me. I was 100% right on that. So that does reinforce my belief in myself and stop me self-doubting, because it's categorically true, because he actually told me, I don't understand why you got upset that much about your friend lying, former friend lying. So he categorically said the words, he doesn't understand me, which re-emphasized the fact that I am right in my thinking about this dynamic between me and him not being healthy for me. You don't want a therapist who definitely doesn't understand you, because if it mirrors past as well, people not understanding you and taking your abuser's side and getting you to see abuser's point of view and minimizing and, you know, minimizing the abuser or minimizing the manipulator or minimizing the liar, the aggressor, you know, You don't want to be around that type of person. You don't want to be around the therapist who's doing that, because it's facilitating the bad behaviors that caused you harm in the first place that you're trying to heal from in therapy. It's counterproductive, and it's really not healthy. It's actually very shocking. But when we think about every person, even in authority, as a human being with flaws and their own attachment styles, their own wounds, their own experiences they're bringing to the table, their own like difficulties or whatever, everyone's got them. You know, like I said, I'm more vulnerable because I do have an anxious attachment. I know that about myself. I've worked on my anxious attachment, but I still, particularly with relationships, you know, close relationships, close friendships, that's when it's most effective. But I have a lot of trauma in that regard. I mean, my last 2 friendships, both of them now basically deceived and betrayed me. At least the first one, I know they deceived me for the whole entire 5 years of the friendship. The last one, I don't know how much of that 7 years of friendship was just deceit and betrayal, and how much was actually true either. And I've got a question mark. I'll never know. I'll never know now. But the behaviour in the end, the aggression, and I felt a devaluation for 2 years. So nearly 2 years, October 2023 to this year, August the 1st, right? When that friendship ended for me. Yeah, it's difficult. And so I definitely think the last 2 years there was probably deception happening, because especially of the denial constantly that there was a dynamic change. If there was no dynamic change, that wouldn't have happened in the end, I don't believe. And I wouldn't have seen a lack of empathy, not asking me many questions about myself in the end. It was me asking them all the questions the majority of time about themselves. So they're not really that interested in me anymore. And in that respect, you know, even though they were doing acts of service for me, this is why it's so weird. You know, when you've got a person who's contradicting themselves all the time with 2 completely different behaviours, extremes almost, no empathy, but acting like they care by doing a lot of acts of service for you, it's very disorientating. That does screw your mind up, because you're like thinking, hang on a minute, they can't be a bad person because they're doing all these caring acts of service. But they show me a complete lack of empathy when I'm talking about abuse in my past, and all they care about is wanting to see the property that's near my abusers. Or, well, near one of them there still remains there, and the other one has like left, but obviously I've got those memories. Like, you know what I mean? It's just incongruent. It's complete contradiction, incongruency, and it's a mind screw up, to be honest. This is why it's so difficult with, you know, when you're dealing with certain types of people, when they're just so contradictory. It's like they're giving you 2 different complete versions of themselves in one. You're like, what the hell is the effing truth? And when you think about they're both the truth, they're both doing this, then you have to ask yourself, well, why? Like, what the hell is going on? But you can't figure someone else's head out completely, because you're not them. And so you're just like, you know, there's so many contradictions. This person contradicting themselves a lot, actually. You know, in their behaviour to what their words were. And so, yeah, it's just it's completely screws your head up, and you can't, you know, you try to make sense of it, and you try and go back and reenact that, like, hang on, they were really, really kind and caring in that way. That's the way it felt. But don't forget, they did tell me, and I checked with them again another time, that they weren't just helping me because they genuinely cared. They were helping me to get praise and external validation, which they needed, they told me. So, which is a red flag in and of itself. You know, if someone relies on other people for external validation, it means they often are like a chameleon and will change to whoever's around them, which might be the case with them. They might have had lots of different faces for different people and behave differently with different people. Because, like I said, these people that are often chameleons, and they'll change to whoever's around them, because otherwise they'd be fixed. They wouldn't keep changing their behaviour and showing, like, they wouldn't be in a video with me, for example, because they didn't like the motion. They couldn't control it. Again, controlling is a red flag. If someone wants to control everything in their life, the way others perceive them to extremes, then that's a red flag, right? That this person's possibly got narcissistic traits, for example, because narcissists or narcissistic people that got narcissistic traits, they want to control the narrative of how people view them and see them, so that people think they're kind and caring and don't think bad of them. Right, they want to control that all the time. So I would say it's a narcissistic trait. I'm not saying it's full-blown narcissism, but I'm just saying I would say it's a narcissistic trait. In any case, it's not a good trait to have, right? If they're trying to control the narrative of how people perceive them, It's just not a good behavior and way of being, to in effect manipulate people, to see them for who they want people to see them for what they want people to see about them. But so while this person refused to be in a video with me, they did actually appear on the news campaigning for a political party, going like this, right? That's two completely contradiction things. They got social anxiety, yet they'll go on knock on strangers' doors to do political campaigning, people they've never met before in their life. I did a job once that involved knocking on doors, right? I only stayed in the job 1 week, and I'm extrovert. This person's meant to be an introvert. I stayed in the job 1 week because I couldn't stand it. I don't even know if it was that long. It might have just been 2 days in a week, but basically I was out there. I couldn't do it. I hated knocking on strangers' doors, not knowing where they're eating or got family around them or they're doing something. I was interrupting them. I couldn't do it, and it was high-pitched selling, you know? Although they weren't selling, they're campaigning. It's, you know, they're talking to strangers, they're knocking on the doors. I don't really, to me, this is just complete contradiction, but they had a lot of this type of stuff. So you kind of, what happens is you get acclimatized to this stuff. You get acclimatized to contradiction, so you just accept the person's contradictory the whole time. Because if you are going to accept a person for who they are and they're a complete contradiction, and you're going to exist in time and space with that person, you can't change that person, obviously, because you can't control another human being. You shouldn't want to. But by that, you have to accept who they are for who they are. And so if they completely contradict themselves, you have to live with their contradiction. And then you're accepting it. And then it almost becomes normal to you that you don't even totally think. It pops in your head, this is a contradiction. But you're kind of like, oh, well, they contradict themselves all the time anyway, so I'm just used to it. It's like they're normal. So it minimizes your own sense of what's really not normal. And you then accept the unnormal behavior as just normal. Do you see how this works? It's very the more I reflect on all these things, the more I learn. Am I perfect? No, my disabilities are really hard to deal with. This person did do a lot of stuff for me. They helped me move and everything, right? So I'm not saying they didn't do anything for me. They were kind. You could say kind in that way. It wasn't totally kind because obviously they're doing praise and validation as well. So it's not just completely unself-centered care. But anyway, they did a lot for me in that respect. I'm not going to deny they did that. It's true, they did. My difficult disabilities are very hard to deal with sometimes. I like things done a certain way. So you could say I might come across as demanding like that, or they didn't say I was demanding. This is how someone else can interpret my way of being or something, and my disabilities and how difficult they are. They didn't say this, but that could be interpreted that way, and I like things done a specific way. And I had a lot of difficulties, and I did used to rely on them a lot. So maybe I was over-reliant on them, and that's something, I don't have any in-person friends at the moment. So I'm just relying on myself completely to look after myself, which is hard when I've got broken bones in my spine, but I'm still doing a really good job. I'm less stressed than I was before. By leaving that friendship, I'm actually less stressed than ever before. My nervous system is a lot calmer in general, but not this last week because I knew the therapist was a problem. So now I've left the therapist. I was going to say lost, but I haven't really lost. I left them on my own accord. So I've walked away from the last in-person friend I had, because the situation became toxic for me, and I've actually walked away from my therapist as well. This takes so much courage and strength. But I call this the clean slate protocol. In the Love Life Club, they say there's no such thing as a clean slate protocol because you've got your own experiences you bring to the table in another situation. You have different things that's happened. So it's never really a clean slate because you've always got pre-lived experiences, pre-knowledge, things you've learned. Do you know what I mean? And so there's always some stuff that's already in existence. So it's not like you're having a clean slate in that way. But in terms of the therapist and in terms of not having any in-person friends at the moment, I'm having a clean slate in the sense that I'm starting from zero again in terms of having no therapist. So I'm going from one therapist to zero therapist. I'm going from having in-person friends to no in-person friends. There are still acquaintances. I mean, I do still go to meetups. Me and the person who interviewed me on Phonic FM, We keep in touch by email sometimes. So I consider that as a acquaintance, like a business acquaintance, you know. But he did invite me last time to have a drink with him and his friends. So, you know, it's nice, you know. So it's not like I've got nothing going on with meeting people. But most of the time I spend at home on my own, which really I probably should change that a bit more. Heather, grieving is hard, Sandra, especially with a friend that close. Thank you. Yes. It is hard. There's no doubt about it. Especially when you trusted that person so much. I didn't expect them to be aggressive with me. It was complete shock, as you probably can imagine. The person did a lot for me in terms of acts of service for my disabilities, and to have that aggression and the whole gaslighting, deflection, blaming me and everything, it was just painting themselves as a saint. It was absolutely awful. And having the courage to walk away. Years ago, I wouldn't have had the courage to walk away from that situation. It's only because I've joined the Love Life Club that I have a lot more strength and courage and conviction in what I do now, because of all the training and coaching I've had in there for over a year now. Because I know you can't stay in these situations. I know that they went, you know, I told them reconnecting with the form. They said I was controlling them, but as I've learnt in the Love Life Club, it's not control when they've still got the option of what they do. I said if they reconnect with that person, it would be my worst nightmare, because I don't think I can still stay friends with them. This was only 2 weeks before this happened that I found out they were going to reconnect with them. They told me they wouldn't let that person come between us. And actually, they were the ones that then went back to them. So, you know, the person that deceived and betrayed me. So it's not fair on me, because I shared a lot of secrets with that person. And now it's like they've gone back to the person who betrayed and deceived me. But it's like, okay, if they want to go back to a... But to my mind, it's like, well, they're just two peas in a pod now, both avoidance. It's easier to talk about general stuff, isn't it, with each other, because then they don't have to hold themselves accountable and they can just blame me or whatever, which no doubt they probably are. And because the other person blamed me for their mental health when they had severe mental health problems before I even met them. You know, I'm talking about schizophrenia, the person who deceived me for 5 years. I'm talking about, like, you know, the fact they actually have done stuff that's not good in their past and stuff. I won't go into all that, but yes, so it is hard. So even though I know I did the right thing by walking away from that form of friendship, I feel so much better in myself. I feel less stressed. Even though I do all the shopping on my own now, I feel far less stressed doing it. It's really weird. This person spent hours doing shopping for me, right? But I feel far less stressed now, and I get it done a lot more efficiently, usually, even with chronic pain, even with broken bones on my spine, than when that person was helping me. That's very telling. When your nervous system's calmed down, it's very telling. But yeah, I'm still going through a grieving process for that, because of course it's going to take time, which is why I'm purposely not going after friends in person. I'm purposely not doing that at the moment, because I don't want to make the same mistakes of attracting these people that in the end don't value my worth, that devalue me, that in the end are deceiving me. And I don't realise this. I can't guarantee that's not going to happen again, because, you know, like I said, people repeat patterns. Like, what happens is your subconscious ends up gravitating towards people that are not good for you. But the therapist that was red flagging me, that I've left, he was chosen by the centre for me. I didn't choose him. So it's not like I picked him out and was attracted to him in terms of, like, for a therapist. I didn't even know what therapist I was going to get given until they actually, you know, said that someone's available now, because I was on a waiting list. I'm guessing he happened to be the next available person. But I thought the humanistic approach that he was meant to have would be really good for me, what he told me. I didn't understand all the 6 core principles, because I hadn't got them until I printed them out before I took them to the session. Decided to leave. But you know what I mean? The 6 core principles he's not even living up to. And so the therapy I thought I was getting from him is not really the therapy I was getting from him, because he's not actually abiding by the principles he's meant to be teaching. Well, meant to be embodying. He's not actually living by them. So what I thought I was getting, I'm not actually getting from him. And he set the scene from, like, the beginning of therapy, saying this is the type of therapy I do. This is who I follow. This is the training I have. And so I'm actually shocked. But yeah, it does take a while to get over it. So even though I know I did the right thing by walking away from that former friend, it's still a grieving process I'm going through. And I was feeling very angry with my former friend lately because I felt like he's got very self-serving behaviours. Like if I think back to what he was telling me in the very beginning, like if I think back to the stuff he said, like worries about what people think about him all the time and, you know, all the rest of it, I'm like, oh, so you were having a mask then, really, weren't you? I bet you're different people. I bet you're different faces with different people and stuff like that. And I was quite angry. I'm at the angry stage, right? Because like when you're treated like when you're like you like grieving process, you go through different stages, and like you know, you can get angry. It's natural to feel angry when someone's lied to you, which he did do. It's natural to feel anger when someone gaslights. I feel very angry that for 2 years he denied, well, nearly 2 years, he denied there was a dynamic shift. Because in effect, he wasted my time for that 2 years in a falsity. When I was right all along, it made me question my own judgment and think that, oh, right, this feeling I'm feeling, what I see can't be right, because he's telling me in a calm, controlled manner that no, nothing's changed when I was right all along. That's like a blurring of reality for nearly 2 years. I'm angry with him for that. Of course I am, because it's like, how dare you do that to me? But actually I'm angry in a powerful position, because it's like, I deserve better. I deserve not to be treated that way. I should never have a person denying my reality. And because it's easy for them, wouldn't it? Deny it, then they don't have to deal with the uncomfortable fallout of it. They don't have to deal with the reality of it. You know, they don't have to be accountable and responsible. They can just keep shifting blame onto me, saying, you know, like even said like last year, I think it was, or the year before, I think it was last year, a train station at one point, they're like, oh, you know, it's you're the problem. We know how bad your mental health is, or something like that. It's a really bad remark. And I'm like, then it was a red flag. But I knew if I wanted to stay friends with them, I kind of had to like overlook that and think, well, you know, and then they did say, well, I shouldn't have said that or something. But the fact they said it in the first place, they said, oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. So it's kind of like I forgave them again for that and moved on. But I thought, if that's what you really think, you think I'm the problem, when he came to me with loads of mental health problems that I really helped him with. If he thinks I'm the problem, like, that is like a form of gaslighting. You know what I mean? And I never expected, I'm like, that's what he really thinks. He never said that to me before. That was out of the blue. And I'm like thinking, of all the help I've given you, and then you're basically turning around and saying I'm the problem, that's really horrible. And do you know what I mean? Like, if I'm the problem, why did he have help from me, is my point. If I'm so bad with my mental health and such a bad person because of my mental health, why did he have guidance from me, help from me, overcome depression so I was better than any therapist he'd ever had? Doesn't make any sense. How can I be the problem when I helped him solve his problems? It doesn't make any sense. And make, you know, feel better in himself. It doesn't make any sense. Why would he even look up to me? Why would he even take advice from me if I'm wrong and I'm such a bad person? Why? Again, it's a complete contradiction. That's my point. It's a complete contradiction. It's not true, is it? It's really not true. I think it was a time when I was saying I've noticed he doesn't say he misses me anymore. And instead of him accepting that responsibility of him saying, realising and telling me, no, because he doesn't miss me like he used to, or whatever, then that's a deflection. You know what I mean? So again, this is just really all hard stuff. But I thought that was a glaring red flag. But because he said, oh, I shouldn't have said that to you. Sorry. You know, then I'm like, do you know, it's a pattern. Like sometimes you can be forgiving and actually you shouldn't, because it's like, actually, it was still a red flag for me. And there was red flags going on with him, but I just parked them because I kept thinking, this is a devaluation. This is a really not a good thing he's saying to me. But because I had kind of no concrete evidence in my mind, because he wasn't saying the dynamics changed, he kept saying, no, it's not changed. I felt like I not got enough evidence to go on where I can actually say, well, this friendship is really not good for me anymore. I'm going to leave it, especially when he's still doing acts of service and being caring in other ways. And he's still messaging me each day. But something weird happened this year where he started messaging me like an acquaintance. Like I wasn't even his close friend. It was really weird. And then I had to address that with him. Then I noticed, like, before we and before the friendship had to end, before I walked away, I noticed he wasn't asking me many questions. It's something I brought up like a few weeks before. But actually, I think I brought it up even that day. I think it might have been earlier. Like I brought it up. I can't remember. Or was it? No, it's a week before. Anyway, it's during those weeks that I brought it up. But I think I might have brought it up again. But I'm not sure. Because it was all a bit of a blur, that. But anyway, I know for definite I did say something to him about it. And he's like, oh, I think I do ask you questions. I said, I don't think you asked me many questions about myself. I've noticed that. Because my therapist was asking me questions. And so Matthew AI. And I'm like, and I know in the Love Life Club, they teach you that it's a red flag with anyone if they don't ask you many questions about yourself. Like, obviously, if it's just an acquaintance, like, you don't spend much time with the person, they're not going to be sat there asking you loads of questions. But even on a date should be asking you questions. If you're the one asking all the questions on a date with someone, then you know that this person is not really interested in you. They're not curious about you. They're probably just wanting sex with you. So they teach in the Love Life Club, a red flag is when someone is not asking you many questions about yourself and you're the one asking them questions about themselves. They teach this. And one of the coaches, who's Stephen Hussey, Matthew's brother, says that he realised at one point that some of the friends he had, I think it was 2 or 3 friends he had, didn't ask him hardly any questions about himself. It was him asking all the questions. And he realised these people are no good as friends. They're not proper friends. So he stopped having them as friends and moved on because he's like, why am I the one asking all these questions? They don't value his worth. So, so if someone doesn't ask you many questions about yourself, if you're the only one asking questions all the time, that's a red flag usually that this person isn't any good for you because they're not really curious about you as a person. They're not really that invested or interested in you. So do watch out for that. But you know what I mean? So it's been hard. And like you say, it's especially hard when you got a lot of, it's a friendship loss. So I've had a 5-year friendship end in deception. And then this one has basically ended in aggression, lies, deception, deflection, gaslighting. So it's like, and they overlapped both together. So it's like really hard on me. It's going to be hard for anyone to deal with that stuff. I'm not saying I'm perfect, like I do have an anxiety disorder. I do have anxious attachment style. I do like things done a certain way. I'm not perfect. I talk and stuff a lot for some people, and other people are like, well, I love you talking. I love your energy. So we're each different and we're each suitable to different people, So I'm not saying I'm perfect by any means. I mean, any time that I've tried, if I've even, like with my former friend, occasionally I said something, oh, that didn't sound very good the way I said it, It might, it sounded like I was a bit abrupt. Was I a bit abrupt? Because I wasn't really sorry. But, so I was constantly still trying to look at my own behaviour, which is important, And I'm sure he's saying stuff probably to other people about me, like, oh, her disability, she relied on me too much. I'm so glad that she's out of my life, probably. I don't know. He might be thinking that. It's possible, isn't it? He didn't say that to my face, but I know one time he was doing my shower. I'm cleaning my shower, and I said, oh, I'm worried that I'm like a bird. And he's like, oh, well, I don't want to be doing this all the time. I'm okay to do it now. And so he didn't actually say I wasn't a burden, so I'm guessing probably he thought I was a burden or something, but you know what I mean? So there was no reassurance that I'm not. And so that for me means like, yeah, he's probably doing stuff really not wanting to do it some of the time. I don't know. But yeah, when I first met him and he was doing housework for me, he loved it. He like, oh no, I love doing housework. He used to be really enthusiastic and say, I like being directed from you as to what housework to do. I really enjoy this type of stuff and really enthusiastic to see me and all the rest of it. So that was a very big difference to what happened in the end. Whereas he wasn't so enthusiastic to see me. It was me wanting to see him more, even though he did see me more because I requested it, basically. Which didn't feel good, so it felt an imbalance and more of a one-sided connection in the end. So, that's what happened, and it's a really difficult and grieving process. Does take a long time, and I'm not keen to get into any like in-person friendships really quickly. There was a person who I considered my friend for a very short time, but then I found out they're not honest. They don't keep their promises to their friends. They don't even show up. Well, I mean, promises to their friends. If they say to their friend they'll show up and see them, they told me that they don't do that. They don't follow through and they'll just go and do something else without even saying that. And so, you know what I mean? That was not going to work for me. And I told them that. And they were also like not telling me the truth. They were lying as well, about things. So I said that doesn't work for me. So that was the end of that. And yeah, so I've gone back to just being me, but I'm happier with myself. And I think, you know, having the courage to walk away, whether it's from a friend that's not treating you right, an abusive situation that just isn't good for you, bad behavior that just shouldn't be tolerated, including from a therapist. You know, that's what you have to do, and you have to be brave and strong and courageous and do it. And the more you can be courageous and brave and strong and do these things, the more you can actually trust yourself, trust your own judgment, and know your truth when other people are trying to convince you otherwise and trying to make you doubt yourself by gaslighting, blurring your reality, and making out that you're in the wrong. By the way, they say things, you know, like, oh, I don't understand why you're so upset about that, making it like me question my own self and my own reality. Like, should I even be that upset? Of course I should be upset if someone lied to me. You know what I mean? It's like a betrayal and a complete break of trust. And it's like, what else were they lying to me about? So stay strong, people. If you like this video, if you've got any insights and information that's useful in it, please give this video a thumbs up. Really appreciate all the thumbs up. If you don't know who I am, I'm Sandra Bellamy. If you're new to this channel, author of Asexual Perspectives book on Amazon. So also Diary Confessions of a Hyperromantic Asexual, brilliant. If you want to know some life lessons, which would be very helpful if you've watched this video, whether it's live with me now or you're watching it on replay when you're playing it back after it's been processed, I definitely recommend getting a copy of Diary Confessions of a Hyperromantic Asexual, 78 Life Lessons to Ace Your Life, because these life lessons are really going to help you in your life journey with some of the things I've been talking about, because I talk about like what person actually says and what they mean are two different things, and I actually break down text conversations as well. So it's really important. I think you should get that book. It's autobiographical as well. And if you're into superhero books, why not get a copy of my Fibromyalgia Self-Help Handbook? This actually teaches you how to reduce pain up to 25 aspects of your life, including emotional pain. So definitely get a copy of this book, Fibromyalgia Self-Help Handbook. These are all available on Amazon. And thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you to Greg. Thank you to Heather. Is it Greg? Yep. Also, thank you to anyone else who's been here. Heather's been here a lot. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And thanks to anyone else in chat. Mixed Green Alien, Duke Jones, Reese. So all this chat, I really appreciate all the wonderful comments. Glenn Powell, leaving your ex-therapist seems like you've already made great steps in healing yourself and moving forward. Best wishes. So yes, it's a very positive note to end on. And it's true, because, you know, if I can see the bad behavior even in a therapist who's an authority figure, and I can walk away from these situations as well, it's really big for my healing, and shows that I'm improving myself, because I'm not accepting and tolerating behaviors that just don't serve me and they're not healthy for me. That's all part of the healing journey, part of the trauma and narcissistic healing journey. So much love to you. Thank you for your support. Thanks, Heather, again, because I know you've been a big participant in this chat, and I appreciate you all. Take care. Lots of love. See you soon next video live stream. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an episode. My live streams usually contain educational content like this, and also no sex movie reviews, where I look more in depth at the themes of them, including identity. And then I do a lot of vlogs, which are more lifestyle and entertainment. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, a mixed bag of asexual education, information, entertainment, and lifestyle, please click that subscribe. It means so much to have you as part of my family community here, and hit that bell icon, which will get you notified of whenever I go live or post a new video. It's all here on Asexualise, My Asexual Life. We're a decade old now on this channel. Oh my gosh, that means I'm at least 10. 10th anniversary was last month. So yeah, it's fantastic to still be here helping you. And over 1.5 million views. So please share this with a friend, anyone you think may benefit from it. And I love you. And I'll see you soon. Stay ace. Lots of love. Take care. Bye.